This man just spent 3 years deploying through Okinawa, spent more years deploying in Afghanistan. He's been on Muse, he's done all of this stuff. He spent years away from family, and now he's home for Christmas, and he's spending Christmas alone. And I was like, nobody is allowed to spend Christmas alone. That's just not okay.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Evolve Your Brand podcast. I'm your host, Oli Emerkes. I just want to give a shout out to Shane ×3 because you love yourself that much. Steven, the whole team at Icon Industries. We appreciate all you do, the high standards that you have, and the difference that you make in people's lives. Without further ado, I want to introduce Kimberly and Buddy Rushing. Welcome, Kimberly. I am so thankful you're joining us because you don't know the amount of money it would have taken if we didn't earn her trust.
You didn't tell me you could pay for this.
Did we not? Why are we getting paid? What is going on here?
I just volunteer myself.
Give me gas money at least. I drove all the way out here.
45 minutes.
And that is our first 60 seconds. So let's go. So I do want to share that this is Buddy's second time around. And since he spent the whole entire, he is a veteran.
I've done this before.
We're going to have so much fun. You guys are in store for it today. He spent the whole entire podcast episode talking about one special person, Kimberly Rushing. And it took a lot for her to be here. So thank you so much for joining us.
You are welcome.
And do you want to share how we guilted you into? I think that would be a fun way to start. Let's start there.
Oli, you have approached me about podcasts since day one, and you were like, "Oh, you're coming," and I was like, "Oh, no, I'm not." "Oh, yes, you are," and then proceeded to make me feel guilty every single time. And then I did a call, by the way, in my pajamas on audio, which you found, and then you ripped me apart. Oh, you did that podcast?
It was like she cheated on you.
Which, by the way, I had anxiety and didn't sleep for 3 days before that one.
She came in and she was like, "Oli's upset because I did a podcast that wasn't his, and now I have to do his." And I'm like, "Yeah, you do. Yeah, you have to do his. I can't believe you did that."
You made me feel guilty. That's why I'm here. So there you go.
I might have told her that you called me crying because she, disrespected you like that.
Which is,
So that's why she's here.
100%.
Deceit and guilt is why she's here.
I figured we had to validate all the emotion that he dropped. I mean, that was such a cool story. We had to get the Kimberly perspective. We owe it to the fan club.
They don't need to know.
We own it. We owe it to the Veterans for Financial Freedom and White Feather Fan Club. I'm sorry. It's just a must. So thanks so much for being a good sport.
Of course. For you.
I appreciate it. I really do. So I want to talk about Die Hard.
Best Christmas movie of all time.
Ever.
Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
So you guys met because of Bruce Willis, that moment.
And I just want to publicly thank Bruce. I know he's going through a lot right now, but Bruce, I just want to let you know wherever you are. I appreciate everything.
Because of you.
It's
the lack thereof, because you still never rented it.
Not from that video store. No. I would go in there innocently trying to rent a DVD so that I could watch it in my room alone.
Right.
And she would rope me into conversation over and over, just like, how'd you grow up? How was your childhood? Were you always handsome, or was this a new thing? And, I was just a midshipman just trying to live my life. And she just kept pulling me back in over and over. It's kind of like Godfather, you try to go out and they pull you back in, and that was just my story.
But
I couldn't have said it any better.
I could see,
and you can relate, right? I mean, all the guys out there, come on, right?
Yeah,
we can relate.
Because all of us have.
Leave us alone, girls. Leave us alone.
Yeah. Okay, so Kimberly, what's the truth to that story? What?
I mean,
you saw Buddy for the first time. You saw Buddy for the first time. What goes through your mind?
I just remember his giant. Well, first of all, there was a bunch of people in there, and then I see Buddy kind of he stood out. I don't know. I don't remember why. I just remember he stood out. But then he was kind of moved around, and he would look, and then he would move around to the other side. And by the way, the video store was the size of a closet. So it's not hard to miss somebody in there. And then he would move around on the other side and they would look. And he was in there for a really long time until all of a sudden everybody left. And then he turns with this giant smile on his face, just like ready to have a conversation. I don't remember what he said, but I remember his smile. And he reminded me over and over and over again, it was to rent a movie, which I very strongly remember was never rented. Every time he came in, I forgot last time. I forgot to rent my movie. I got to rent it this time. Still didn't rent it. But that was the start.
Isn't the truth way more boring than the story? Like my story was better.
True.
Yeah,
it's true. We have a discussion of what's better, true or made up.
You got the end result. So I think it's a great story.
Yeah.
Like you won.
Yeah.
The game is winning.
It's true. It took a while.
True.
It took a while.
Yes.
Okay.
It was 4 full quarters of play.
So I was listening to
in overtime
when you were overseas and the hope that you inspired within that. So when you saw that part of Buddy sharing that, what were your thoughts in that moment when he was going through that story and you brought him hope?
I had no idea, because in my little world, I was working at the restaurant school in Philadelphia. I was running the student event center. So I worked late. Like I would work until 1 a.m. And after all the students would go to sleep, I would still have time to like finish up and I would do my rounds. And then I would go check my computer until it was time to go. And it was 12 o'clock at night now. There's nothing to do. So I would hop on MySpace, and his little messages were the light of my day. But I had a lot of normalcy in my life, right? Like a lot of fun things going on. I worked at a fun student center. It was just the part of Buddy I always missed, right? Because we were friends and we were good friends. And that's why I reached out in the first place, because I missed him. I missed that fun. I missed my friend. And I had no clue what it was that he experienced until really hearing it. I mean, I've heard that story before, but not like that. Not to that degree of that's what got him home. And I never really pictured what it would be like sitting in a mud hut on a laptop, accessing America, right? Like accessing MySpace, which is your touch to the real world, and associating that with me, because we were still just friends, right? So there wasn't anything more than that friendly connection. And to hear that really like shook me. That was shocking.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that I thought about was when he said, that brought me hope, and then I had to shut it off in the morning. And I just, like in the real world, like what we live every day, that's not a choice we have to make.
Thankfully.
Yeah. So I also think it gives us perspective. Like, talk about the opportunity that we have here. What are your thoughts about that? The opportunity that we have in the U.S. versus what you experienced.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so here's a perfect example. There's a small village right outside, and I can still, when you guys were just talking about that, I can picture every, so it's mud hut, right? So the inside of wall is mud, right? It's dried mud. It's called a kalot, and they mortar, they're part of their mortar that they use is rocks. So you'll have rocks sticking out of the wall. And like, I can remember the rock formations in the wall and the tough book with MySpace on it, small screen, and like just wild. It just took me back there. But anyway, so there was a small village right outside. And I told you the story about the little girl, the redheaded girl that would run across the rocks and stuff. And I remember seeing the women working there, and to some degree, the men are enslaved as well, enslaved in turmoil and in war, and a lack of opportunity and stuff like that. But really, you can't hold a candle to the way the women are subjugated and and have no opportunity. And they walk around, or at least at that time, we saw them walking around huddled in little groups, if you ever saw them at all. And they were severely and publicly disciplined by the men physically whenever they would have any infraction, not the least of which would be to show their face to another person, things like that. I mean, give me a break. Can you imagine that here? Like with the abundance of freedoms that we do have. And this is a freedom-loving country. So it's like, if you tell me I can't do anything that I could do yesterday, what happens? Like, look, during a pandemic, right? It's just, and forget all the politics. I'm talking about just the bristling nature of the American to not have his freedom impinged. And I love that. Even if I don't agree with them, I'm still like, yeah, freedom, right? Like that eagle right there. Like I look at that eagle and I'm like, that screams to me freedom. And that's ultimately what I, at least, and the other Marines that I was with, what we were fighting for, was helping them have freedom there, and as well as keeping terrorists from attacking us back home. And, I revel in that freedom. Like, and that's what White Feather and Veterans for Financial Freedom is. It's helping people build financial freedom so they can live that real American dream of freedom. So, I mean, it's you ask what it means. It's like, how can I say it's in my DNA?
Yeah.
Like it's that deep a level of commitment.
And we're gonna talk about parenting too, because I've been talking a lot about to the boys about like the opportunity they have here. Mm-hmm. And I want to take them traveling so they see different parts of the world and they get a different point of view. So we'll jump into that. Let's go to Vegas. So you come back, you're on the flight. Kimberly's on top of mind. Everything is Kimberly. Power. You go to Vegas. So we've heard Buddy's version of when you go to Vegas during the holidays the first time. I want to hear Kimberly's story of Vegas.
Well, Vegas, so our birthdays are days before Christmas. So that was the idea, right? Like, I was so excited that he was back. I was so excited to reconnect. I was single at the time now, so officially single.
Single-ish.
No, I was.
Okay, we haven't
There's a little bit of an overlap.
Single.
There might have been an overlap.
Not an overlap.
We were on a break. Have you ever heard that?
I have not heard the
Okay,
story.
when you're married, that is very different than when you're dating somebody.
Hey, all I'm saying is he might have thought that he was still with you.
Your dating isn't working. He did not. Okay. I was single. And we fly out to Vegas. And I just remember I was wearing this random white sweatshirt. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm. I remember.
And I'm going down the escalator and I'm on the phone with Buddy because by the way, I've never vacationed. Like I had only vacationed when I was very, very young because my parents didn't have money. Okay. So we didn't really have the ability to vacation really. And so this was like a big deal. So Vegas was like, whoa, I'd never been here. I've never done anything like this. I've never even flown by myself. And now I'm showing up in Vegas, which was Sin City. And I was a very good girl. Thank you very much.
Still is.
I was going to say you were.
There's that.
We went to Circus. Just to give you an idea of how good a girl she was, we went to Circus and played in the arcades.
Oh, I love that.
It was so fun. Thank you. That was a fun, and that was your birthday, and that's what you wanted to do. Don't even try to make me look bad. Anyway, so I'm going down the escalator in my white sweatshirt, and I'm talking to him. I was like, okay, how do I find you? Like, how do I know what to do? And he's like, I see you. You look like the Michelin Man. Why would you say that?
I don't remember that
First
at all.
time, yes, you. Oh, I remember that. First time I've seen him in how many years, and I'm wearing a white sweatshirt. So the Michelin Man is white, and he looks like a marshmallow. And I was like, oh, thanks, Budward. And so I go down the escalator. We connect. It's like that nervous, excited energy, right? And that was the start of it. And then we go to check into the hotel. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. They just, straight out of the movies, they only had one bed. They had one bed in the hotel.
Only room they had available.
And I was like, absolutely
Couldn't possibly.
It's Stratosphere. The Stratosphere is like 1/100th of the rooms are full. Like there's plenty of rooms available.
And on Christmas for sure. It was
we're
totally
gonna walk
empty.
right up there. We're going to switch our rooms right now. And so we did. So we switched to 2 beds because we were there as friends. And that's what a respectful friend would do.
Yeah, I wasn't a respectful
No,
friend.
he was not.
I was a guy just back from Afghanistan, lucky to be home. I'm like, I'm going to throw it all out there, see how far I can get.
I love this story. I love it.
Well, he did not win that one. And then
Didn't win many of them.
You didn't, no. But it was all in good nature because then you proceeded to pull out all the fun things. So we went on the helicopter ride. And by the way, let the record state, this needs to be known. Guess what seat I got and guess what seat Buddy got in the elevator or the helicopter? Huh? What would be the sexy seat, right? The one by the window where you could see things.
Right.
For someone who's been in a helicopter for years on missions, I get shoved in the middle.
To keep her safe. I didn't want her to fall out. So I was
what
being
a gentleman would do.
Obviously,
yeah, exactly.
To keep, So I'm like leaning over trying to see anything because right now I'm just seeing lights. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, give me some space.
His natural instinct is to protect. He's
yeah, I can't help it. I was just like, and it just happened to coincide with a beautiful view of Vegas, which I couldn't help, so.
then there was that. And then we did four-wheeling in the Mojave, which I didn't know if you can do that in Vegas. That was probably my most favorite part.
It was awesome.
That was really fun. And they take you through some really cool stuff. I don't even remember where it was, but it was like an excursion. That was fun. So he's showing me the fun side, and I'm the yellow, I'm the fun one. And it was a great time. And then I remember the hot tub. Did you tell the hot tub story?
I don't think I did.
No.
Okay, so we're having good time. We're having fun. We're having a blast. And then we go up to the hot tub on top of the Stratosphere, which sits on top of the hotel. And we're talking, and all of a sudden, I guess you realize that we are friends, and that's where it's going to stay. And he starts to pout. A grown man starts straight up pouting.
No, not at all. This is a horrible part. So why do you think I skipped it the first time?
So I get humiliated, but I can't share this. Oh yeah, he straight up pouted.
I went to the other side of the hot tub. It was a big hot tub, too, big square one or whatever.
Back to me for a while.
I was looking out at the Vegas Strip.
For a while. And I sat there, I was like,
it's a hot tub on top of the roof.
I was like, I came on genuine pretenses. Like there was no miscommunications whatsoever. And he was over there pouting, a grown man. And then it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like this. It was like 20 minutes by the minute. He turned around. He was like, okay, let's go have some fun. And then everything was completely fine after that. He like snapped out of it. He's like, I'm going to make the best of this trip. We're going to have a great time. And then we got out and we went and spent a really, really, really fun night. We went to Harrah's. That's when we found the Flippy Bar because they have this outside area. Like straight out of Cocktail, the bar with the flippy bottles and stuff.
Oh.
I don't know what that's called.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. The one that's outdoor?
It's outdoors.
Yeah, by Carnes, called Carnival.
And then they have like the dueling pianos like right around the corner so you can hear that. And the flippy bar, and they got a music stage behind there with like musicians going on. It was so fun. One of my most fun nights I've ever had that night, right after the pout session. That's what we call it, the pout session.
Do you call it the pout session?
I totally call it the pout session.
Just rubbing and just digging in the knife.
Hey, I get put on the spot all the time. It's only fair. And we had a great time. And
do you remember the poem? There was a poem, right?
Called Serendipity.
So that poem was written on the plane ride when I realized after that night, I think we had one day left, like we were flying back the next day. And that night I was like, what are you doing for Christmas? It's in like 2 days. And he was like, oh, well, my family doesn't really do anything, so I'm just going to go back home. And I was like,
back home to 29 Palms by myself.
Right.
And I was like, what do you mean you're not doing what do you mean? And he's got a big family. And he's like, well, we're not really getting together. We're not really doing anything. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this man just spent 3 years deploying through Okinawa, spent more years deploying or however long in Afghanistan. He's been on Muse. He's done all of this stuff. He spent years away from family, and now he's home for Christmas and he's spending Christmas alone. And I was like, no, I don't know why. Like, I just felt like there was this just like wrench placed on my heart. Like nobody is allowed to spend Christmas alone. That's just not okay. And so I was like, okay, well, my stepmom, because my stepmom worked at the Naval Academy. She still did until this year. So she'd been there for 30 some years. She knew Buddy. She knew of Buddy. She loved Buddy. Like she knew he was a great friend of mine. And I was like, why don't you come spend Christmas with us? Why don't you come back to Annapolis? It feels like home to you. It's a familiar place. It could be great. And I think before the sentence left my mouth, he was already online, like buying a plane ticket.
Don't have to ask you.
Got my middle seat. Now I'm ready to go.
Kimberly, I don't know. I think he likes you a little bit. I don't know what it is. Something gives it away. Like he's a Kimberly fan.
I was over there on the second bed with my laptop. I vividly remember this. She was on the one bed. I was on the second one, and I was typing on the laptop, and I was like, "Yep, booked." I don't even know what airline, didn't care what time, didn't care what seat, didn't care. I was like, I got it.
And he booked it to Philly because that's where I was flying back to, because that's where I lived. I lived in Philadelphia. So we were going to fly back there, which was the same day as my birthday, because my birthday was a couple days after this. So that was the same day as my birthday. So he was going to arrive on my birthday, and then the next day we were going to drive down or something like that, I think, give or take a day. And so he arrives in Philly, and then I make, on the way there, actually, is when you wrote the poem, right? You wrote
on
that
the plane ride. The plane ride over.
That was his birthday present to me. Was a poem, which was certainly
that and paying her heat bill.
I am not. You did not.
I absolutely paid you. Well, no, I volunteered to pay you.
That's
here
very
still.
different than paying. I would.
She
not
was
like
living
to pay.
okay, so she's in Philadelphia in mid-December and has no heat in her apartment.
It's expensive. It was gas. It was
freezing.
gas.
And she's like, put on another sweatshirt. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I was like, tell, where's your heat guy? Because remember, at this time, I had gone from home to the Naval Academy, where everything's taken care of for you, to basically Afghanistan. I've never lived on my own before, didn't know how to pay heat bills. And so I was like, who's your heat guy? Like, tell me who your heat guy is. I'm going to go give him a call and give him some money to turn the heat on.
There's Buddy coming from 29 Palms where it's 120 degrees. And
you never, ever, there's no heaters.
When
there's
I walked
no heaters
in here freaking out, that was Buddy. Just sitting there, I can't think.
It is December in Philadelphia. It's going to be freaking.
Hey, suck it up, Buttercup.
And she made me breakfast of eggs and what was it? Eggs, honey, and cereal, but it was grain cereal. It's like it was as bad as it sounds. It was so bad.
I had 5 jobs in Philadelphia and my own apartment. I was very proud of myself.
It's like a 500 square foot apartment.
But I couldn't exactly afford a lot of groceries, okay?
You had 5 jobs?
I did have 5 jobs. And I actually liked that breakfast. That became one of my favorite breakfasts. So one day I ran out of milk and I was like, what do I have? I have cereal, but I only have like a fourth a cup of cereal. And I have 1 egg and here's some honey. And so I just figured I'd make a concoction. And it was delicious.
It was a concoction. That is the best word for it. It was a concoction.
She said it's delicious. What does Buddy say?
No, it was terrible. It was absolutely horrible.
You are not inventive with food. You've never been inventive.
No.
You don't even like spicy food. You're Mexican. It's a
it's a little bit embarrassing. I'm Mexican and I don't like spicy foods. I like tacos, so at least I fit part of the stereotype. Yeah, that's fair enough.
It's San Diego. Like if you don't like tacos, I think we have to kick you out or something.
There is a rule. That's a great point.
What do you love about Annapolis, both of you? I mean, Annapolis has come up. It's an important part of like your adventure.
Have you ever been?
No.
It is the perfect balance of beauty and history and just like, it's hard to explain, but you love it the moment you step in. So downtown Annapolis specifically. So you have cobblestone streets. You have historic buildings from early 1900s. You have the Naval Academy, which sits across this beautiful bridge and you can see it over the water. And it's breathtaking by itself. And then you have just pockets of water surrounding because it's the bay, right?
The town sits right on the bay. And so you have just gorgeous water everywhere. You have these, and it's also right next to DC. And then it's the center of like a lot of people who serve at the Naval Academy go on to become high-ranking officers. Then they retire in Annapolis. And so you've got a legacy of like, sort of a military legacy as well as wealth and influence from DC. And so you have a lot of really influential people there. Tom Clancy was one of the guys that had a boat there in the basin for the longest time. And so you've got these, multi-million-dollar yachts that like come cruising down what we call Ego Alley, which is this like inlet of basically it drives right into the heart of the city. And it's not a city. I think it's a town. It feels like a town. But there's this like inlet of waterway that comes right into the middle of the town. And so you'll see these yachts pull in and then they'll just circle back. It's kind of like when you were in high school, you'd drive, at least in a small town, you'd drive down and circle the main street. Yeah. Well, they do that, but with $100 million yachts. And so so you can sit right there and like enjoy ice cream or a drink or whatever.
And you can pull your yacht up to the restaurant and they'll serve you
on your boat.
Which I said is a life goal of mine, still is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool.
But
that's a cool life goal. I want to drive my yacht to get a drink.
Like I can rent it for a day. I'd be happy for a day. But
smart.
I remember I was 3 years old when I was on the academy for the first time. I don't remember this, but I was so young because my stepmom worked there and my dad would take us there. And I remember running around the grounds and it felt like a community out of a movie. Like it's grass everywhere and the houses, the base housing looks like cottages just placed sporadically throughout. And the buildings look like magazine covers everywhere you turn. It's just breathtaking. And then you have this giant rock wall on the edge of the base, which is
seawall.
Right around the corner. Yeah, the seawall against the sea, and you hear the birds and you feel the ocean. It's just beautiful. You have to go.
What's the most memorable moment you both shared together in Annapolis?
Oh, that's a good question.
Would it have been that night?
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The night.
Yeah. So I think
it's not
this was,
as it sounds.
no, not at all. I mean, I think it was before we It was before, I mean, we were just friends, but I was getting ready to leave. I had graduated the Naval Academy and I was getting ready to go to the basic school and then off to Okinawa. And I think I was at the basic school and I drove up and she still had a boyfriend. And so for whatever reason, and if he ever hears this, I'd be like, that maybe was your first mistake, was he was like totally cool with her just hanging out with me the whole night. And we never did it. She never did anything right affectionate or whatever, but we were hanging out as friends and building a closer and closer bond that would survive my trip to Afghanistan, that would survive, several years of us not speaking to each other. It was, in my mind, it was that night that cemented a deep-seated memory that I think never left. And so that's what prompted for me, at least, to, when I was on the MU and when I was, traveling around Southeast Asia and all that stuff, telling, all the Marines, you have a lot of downtime to talk, right? And you mostly talk about women. And, and I, it was I would always tell the story over and over of this is I'll never see her again, but she's somebody who holds my heart, right? And I've never felt this way about anyone before. Not that I've ever even kissed her, right? But it's the one that got away, right? And it was just a sort of kind of sad tale, but it stayed there, and I think that night is what cemented it. And it wasn't even that special. Did you know how, in a weird way, as humans, we can experience something that's normal for everybody else, but for us in that moment, it's magical? It was, we had ice cream and we walked along the pier and we talked about whatever we talked about. I don't even remember any of it.
Throwing rocks at our shadows.
Throwing rocks at our shadows in the water.
For a long time.
And we
talking.
Just sitting there on the pier with like our legs dangling, just talking. And then, I think we ended up, I want to say we walked onto the Naval Academy and like maybe walked up to Herndon, which is a monument that's there. Just nothing, literally nothing, right? A normal whatever. Which is why when we both mentioned it as the pivotal moment there, I was thinking to myself, why? Because and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to tell this story now. And it's not an exciting story, but it was a magical night. And it was a magical night without sex, without like any of the stuff you normally associate with love, right? But I think it was when the roots of a love that would eventually turn into what it is now were planted.
Connection.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Back to your original point before of the power of connections. And in my mind, the most powerful force that exists in the world, which is love. I think we talked about it on the last podcast.
Well, I was fascinated because Annapolis has come up a lot. So I just figured, I'm curious. Do you remember your first day in Annapolis? When you saw the campus? What was that?
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing that? Kimberly, by the way, you killed it. I've never wanted to go to Annapolis so bad.
Yeah, exactly.
See the cobblestone?
We actually work for the city of Annapolis.
I was going to say, if Annapolis, you're looking for a spokesman, Kimberly and Buddy Rushing.
Sam, don't put me on the podcast. I will call
I know, yeah.
Put them on your tourism board.
Yeah. We actually just got a check from Annapolis for that speech.
Yeah.
Just now.
Oh, good. I'm just making money, residual income. You're living it. What was it like?
Yeah. So I don't know if I told you the story of getting accepted to the Naval Academy, but so when I was growing up, my mom and dad had divorced and I moved down to Louisiana and with her, and we lived in this little 400 square foot, ratty apartment, and we didn't have any money. And so I worked after school. I would go to school half a day and then finish all my schoolwork. And then I'd go work at a body shop to help pay the bills and stuff. And so I didn't play any sports in high school or any of that kind of stuff because I was working. Well, in order to be the people that get accepted to the Naval Academy, they are 4.0, 4.5.0. I didn't know 5.0 was a thing. I got there and people were like, yeah, my grade point average in high school was 5.0. I'm like, I thought it was a 1 to 4 scale. Right. And they're like,
how are you getting an extra point?
They're like, I remember going there and one of the guys asked me, he was like, we were going into the plebes, or what they call freshmen. Right. And so you go in and you're taking, I'm pretty sure it was algebra, right? And so he was like, hey, are you going to validate algebra? And I was like, I don't know what the word validate means, right? And he was like, well, it means you take a test and then you don't have to take algebra because you took it in high school, obviously, right? And I was like, I didn't take algebra in high school. He's like, well, what about physics? I'm like, didn't take physics in high school. Chemistry? Didn't take chemistry in high school. So there were evidently people lots of people, most of the people there, who had not only taken physics, chemistry, but they'd taken college courses in high school, which is how they get above a 4.0, come to find out. And so you have people that are already taking college courses and crushing them. And I'm in there and like, I graduated from high school in Glenmora, Louisiana. And like one of the nicknames for students in Glenmora is Glenmorons. And so, right. So I was a Glenmoron and I was graduating top of my class, but it was a class of 35 people. And so, I applied to the Naval Academy because, it seemed like, awesome, right? It seemed like a great way to go to school and to get it paid for and to wear a cool uniform. And it really was no more sexy or honorable than that. And so I applied and they were like, you've got good grades, but like you literally have nothing else going on. Like convince us as to why we should take you. And I was like, and tell us, by the way, you got kicked out of high school your sophomore year for getting in a fight. So tell us about that. We don't want troublemakers. And I was always a good storyteller. And so I wrote this letter. Shocking. And my mom will tell you to this day, it was the most compelling letter she's ever read. And it told this David versus Goliath story of how I was representing myself with honor and how I wanted to not just in a Sun Tzu sort of way, I wanted to not only fight this fight, but win every fight so I'd never have to fight again. And all this stuff that like, when looking back, you're just like, whoa, this high school kid's got his stuff together. And that story helped like sway them to give me a chance. But nevertheless, like they put me on the waiting list of the waiting lists. And so it came to basically a week before what they call induction day, which is day one at the Naval Academy. And I got a letter from the Department of Defense that said, sorry, you haven't been accepted to the Naval Academy. So I threw it in the trash and I ripped up all my stuff and I was like, screw this, I'm done. I'm just going to go get a job, whatever. And then 6 days go by and it's 2 days before induction day. And I get another letter simultaneously, I remember picking it up and seeing the seal. And I was like, wow, they're just going to tell me again that I'm not accepted, right? That sucks. And I almost didn't open it. But I did eventually just to kind of scan through it. And it was as if the other letter didn't exist. It was like, congratulations, welcome to the class of 2004 of the Naval Academy. Please report to the United States Naval Academy, And I was like, whoa, I didn't find out till later. What happened is I had been put on a wait list. And there are people that always the day before or 2 days before be like, no, I'd rather go to Harvard. I'd rather go to whatever. And then they pull the waitlisters in. And so I got in like Indiana Jones under the door, right, into the Naval Academy. But I still had to get to Annapolis. And so I didn't have any money, right? So the only flight that my mom scraped up every dollar she had, the only flight that she could afford was an overnight, a red eye that landed the morning of induction day. Right. So I landed at like 3 a.m. in Annapolis, in Baltimore, actually, BWI. And I had this duffel bag, full of everything that I owned. And I had a pamphlet that said United States Naval Academy on it. That's all I had. Right. And so, I mean, there are people that get there the week before. Their parents are there. Their grandparents are there, all of whom served in the Naval Academy and distinguished admirals and generals. And they know every square inch of the yard, which is what we call the campus. And they've already signed up for classes. They know everything. I land the morning of at 3 a.m. with a pamphlet that has a number on it that says call, and you call the front desk basically of the Naval Academy. And I'm like, hey, this is Edward Rushing and I'm supposed to report today. And they're like, okay, take a shuttle. And I'm like, I would love to, but I don't have any money. I literally have $0. And they're like, okay. So they send somebody to go get me. Right. And they pick me up, they shuttled me back and they dropped me off at 4:45 a.m. by the time I got there. And induction day starts at 5. At 5 a.m., everybody's kissing, hugging their parents and getting ripped away, their heads shaved, all their stuff done. So that was my start. And my first day, I remember after going through all of that, I'm terrified, right? I have no idea what's going on. I've never really been out of Tennessee that much in my whole life. And so I walk into the dorm room and the first guy that I see is a guy named Pluff. His last name was Pluff. And he was a older guy, a guy that had served in the Navy, real crusty, real hard dog, been around the block 1,000 times, had no time for me whatsoever. And I remember thinking that first night, this is horrible. Like everybody's so mean. Like I don't know anything about anything. And I like, this sucks. Like, I don't want to be here. I do not want to be here. This is terrible. This is miserable. That was my first night, my first day and night.
You can imagine that's not a comfortable feeling for Buddy.
And what was like, what was that moment where you're like, this is it for me. Like I'm doing this regardless of what.
I never considered quitting. And the reason that I never considered quitting, well, so there's two parts of this. One is I never considered quitting, but not for any noble reason. It was because I had absolutely no money. And if I went back home after this, I was working at Co-op or at Walmart, right? Like I had no money and no scholarships because I didn't play any sports. I wasn't on student government. I didn't have anything like that. And so there was the lack of, you ever heard the story of, Cortez, whenever he lands in the Inca and he burns his ships so that they have no retreat to the sea. Well, from the benefit of being poor, all my ships were already burned. And so I didn't have the option to. So whenever other people quit, lots of people quit, especially plebe year, tons of people, they're like, that's it, I'm out. And they just drop, right? It's like something like a 30% attrition rate.
Wow.
And that wasn't me, no matter what happened, because I was more afraid of getting kicked out, right? Because I was slower than a lot of people, and I definitely academically I wasn't anywhere near the ballpark of most people. But I was very tough, and interestingly enough, I also sweat a lot, right? So here's why that's important. When you're in the crucible, when you're in the grind and they've got you lined up against the wall and they're screaming at your face and they're like, Rushing, drop and give me 100 flutter kicks. And you're like, Roger, and you're doing all this stuff and you're running back and forth and everything. The people who succeed in the military, by and large, are not the smartest, the fastest, the strongest, the people with the right last name. They're the people who refuse to quit and the people who will put in the work. And so, because I sweat a lot, it looked like I was maximum effort, like Deadpool, maximum effort all times. And I had contact lenses. And so they wouldn't let you wear contact lenses. So they give you what they call BCGs, birth control glasses. And the reason they call them birth control glasses is because they're these big, just Google birth control glasses, military, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So they're these big brown rectangular like frames with these big thick lenses, and you look so stupid. And so like no one would ever have sex with you, hence the reason birth control. And so I had these glasses on and I sweat a lot, which means that they were constantly fogging up. And so I'd be leaning against the wall being like, sir, yes, sir, sir, no, sir. And they'd come up, and I remember Midshipman Lieutenant Roach was the guy's name, real thick, strong guy that was like 5'3". And so he had a Napoleon complex. So he was mad to begin with because he was so short. And so he was, and he scared me to death, right? And I'm just like doing everything I can. And he'd come up, look at me, look at my sweat streaming down my face at the fogged BCGs and be like, Rushing, you motivate me. And then he'd move on, right? So I was saved by my
sweat glands,
perspiratory abilities. I don't know if that's a word, but that's.
You're sweating now.
I'm sweating right now. I do. I sweat a lot.
You have to use what you got.
You use what you got, and I remember that vividly. And so they thought I was the most motivating plebe ever, and so that helped me a lot. And the fact that I was so scared of getting kicked out that I would do as many flutter kicks as they wanted. I would do as many, whatever. I never once spoke back. I never once quit on anything ever because I felt fear that if I quit, I was so afraid that they make you do a urinalysis. I'm not sure why, because you can't possibly be doing drugs there because you're locked down 24 hours a day, but they make you do a urinalysis. And I had a shy bladder. And so I had... it means that it's hard to pee on command, right? I'm like 18-year-old kid, difficult for me to pee on command. Okay. I was so scared that they would kick me out.
Because you couldn't pee on command?
Because I couldn't pee on command, that I stayed up the whole night before, pounding water, so that I would have nothing but a physiological certainty of peeing.
I didn't know.
Yeah. I pounded water up to the point and they were like, who's next? And I'm like, me, because like my eyeballs were underwater. And I went in and the flow happened. And not only so I peed, ended up doing that. And then I was like, you're going to need to give me a minute because he ended up remarking. So check this out. Here's how life works.
Happened?
So not only did I do, right, and it was like pure clear, right? It was the clearest like pee you've ever seen. Because I had like a distended belly. I looked like I was 8 months pregnant because I was so full. And so I peed and I finished peeing in the urinal. And he was like, goodness. Like, how long you got? I was like, it's going to be a few more minutes. I was like, I was up all night. And so he comes back, I get in formation. He goes, I want to tell you guys about dedication and motivation. Midshipman Rushing just drank so much water that he almost died because he wanted to be able to pee when we needed him to pee. That's what I'm talking about, Rushing. And
this is Roach.
Yeah, this is Roach, Midshipman Lieutenant Roach. Yeah.
So
I won Roach over because I was so afraid
Right.
of getting kicked out of the Naval Academy that I did whatever it took. And I remember watching, and I tell this story quite a bit, but I remember watching Rocky. And Rocky 4 is the best one. So I always watch Rocky 4 when I get motivated,
When he's
right?
in
The
Russia,
other ones
right?
are great. Yeah, Ivan Drago and all.
Yeah.
It's the best one. Rocky Balboa is the second, and I think probably. Anyway, so I watched it, but the central theme is the exact same in all the Rocky movies and all the Creed movies, everything. It's not about getting hit. It's about being able, or it's not about being able to hit hard. It's about being able to take hits. It's about being able to keep moving forward, right? This whole speech that he does. And I remember resonating with that so much. I'm like, man, I'm getting hit a lot. Like I am nowhere near the top of the heap or the middle of the heap, or I'm lucky if I'm going to be able to make it out of here, especially after my first chemistry test when I got a 47 and I tried really hard and I studied really hard.
Oh shit.
And I remember I graduated high school top of my class. I never got anything less than like a 96 or something on any test ever. And I get a 47 when I tried really hard and I was scared to death. And all of that, and I remember thinking to myself, and this is the answer to your question of when it changed. I remember thinking to myself, they're going to have to drag me out of here. Like, as long as my heart is still beating, I'm going to keep moving forward toward whatever goal I have. And I've kept that through Afghanistan. I kept that through building 4 businesses. She'll tell, I'd say 2 things all the time. No one's shooting at me, so it's not as big a deal as you think it is, right? Yeah, the contractor screwed us over, Roger, right? Yeah, this person took, $40,000 they shouldn't have taken, Roger, right? But nobody's shooting at us. So let's talk about this and what we need to do in the frame of that. And the second is, as long as our heart's still beating, you're not going to stop me, right? And even after my heart stops beating, you're not going to stop the legacy we've created.
He says this all the time.
Well, you live it all the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. This is I talk about things that I'm like, you know what? Stop talking. Like, just freaking do the work. Thank you for sharing that. Like, I didn't even realize the struggles that you had in Annapolis is like, holy shit.
Yeah, I've never told that story before.
I've
Really?
never heard the shy pea story.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually that.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
I believe it though. He doesn't
true.
like to be in front of me.
And I appreciate that. So now we're fast forward to Christmas. You're flying out.
Yeah.
to Philadelphia.
This would be 6 years later.
Okay.
So,
And then what happened?
yeah, I've already told my version. So you tell your version of the story.
How did you and Buddy
From your
end up
apartment.
together?
How did we end up together?
Yeah, so you fly out. He comes out for the holidays. You just finished up in Vegas. What's next for Buddy and Kimberly?
Well, we'll just fast forward a little bit here.
Are you? Okay. How many years are we fast forwarding from?
No, days, couple days, or a day, right, to get down there. So we're on the drive down. And well, so we'll start at my birthday. So he makes me a dinner for my birthday, which was the one and only thing he knew how to make. And it was
Spaghetti, baby. Oh, yeah.
What kind of meatballs? Sausage?
I don't remember
Pretty
meatballs.
sure there was not
I think
meatballs.
it was ragu.
It was ragu
And spaghetti.
pomodoro,
But I felt
whatever.
bad because my friends wanted to take me out to say happy birthday. So I was late. So the spaghetti was super sticky by the time I got there.
Yeah, it was sticky
and he
cold.
was such a good sport about it. He was like, I made you dinner. And it was this sticky glob. They and then pours the ragu over top, and then, but it was really sweet. And then he gives me this poem, which I'd never been written a poem before. And it was it's called Serendipity. And it could have been conceived as romantic, but he's like, no, just read the words and listen to what it's saying. And I was like, okay. And it was extremely wonderful and awesome. And it actually became our wedding invitation, actually.
Yeah, on the back of our wedding invitation, we put one of the stanzas on it.
No freaking way.
Because it's about serendipity, right? And just ending up together, right, in life, no matter what that means, but ending up together. And so the next day we're driving down. And that's when I decided to call my parents and tell them I'm bringing someone with me. So this is Christmas Eve, okay? And we're driving down and I make the phone call and I call my stepmom, who again knows Buddy, super sweet. She's the kind that's
She's
welcoming,
amazing.
loving,
Her name's Ellen Sherman. She's phenomenal.
Yeah, she was always such a great example, and why I have such fond memories of Annapolis. A lot of it was in part to her because she was who I saw most. I worked 80-hour weeks there, so I saw her a lot because she worked at the academy with me. She got me the jobs there. So I called her and I was like, hey, do you remember Buddy? I just went to see him in Vegas. We hung out. I found out he's going to be home alone on Christmas, and I couldn't. I can't. So I'm bringing him with me, basically, like, pack it in. Now, to be fair, I did call and ask permission before he bought his plane ticket. And I called and asked her. So I'm making the call, reminding her, hey, remember when you said? So we're on our way. Well, my dad in the background starts losing his mind, losing his ever-loving mind. My brothers, come to find out later, are chirping in his ear, who's this guy coming home with our sister from Vegas? And now they want to meet the parents. Like, what just happened in Vegas? And
they probably thought she picked me up in Vegas or something.
Freaked out. No, I think they thought we got married.
Okay.
I think they thought we got married. And my dad lost it. I didn't live with my dad growing up. I lived with my mom. I visited my dad holidays and summers and things like that. But like, I hadn't lived with him full time. And my brothers left when I was in 7th grade because my mom and my stepdad went bankrupt. So they moved in with my dad when we had to pack up everything that we had left and moved to Amish country, Pennsylvania. So I moved up there, lived as an only child with my mom and my stepdad, and they lived with my dad. So they had this bond with my dad at this point that I didn't have, right? So here they are chirping in his ear. And my dad, who never had to deal with me dating before because I never lived there, right? And now I'm bringing this guy home who he doesn't know. And all of a sudden, he's not okay with it. And all of a sudden, he is like, absolutely not. And my dad is a 6'2", I think 6'3",
big
dude.
Burly, like deep voice.
Deep voice.
He's an intimidating guy.
And I could hear him roaring in the background. And he was like, I don't say profanity. Absolutely not, right? Like, just like very aggressively no. And then my stepmom is just like going at it. And then she's getting upset because she told me it was okay. He bought a plane ticket. We're on our way down. Now what do we do? And so eventually, basically, the word was absolutely no. You're not welcome in this house if you bring him, essentially was the theme of the day. And looking back, I understand now, like, what happened in their mind, but instead of maybe asking, they just were like, no. Mm-hmm. And so Buddy and I are now driving down and we're like, well, shoot, what are we going to do? Well, like, what are we going to do? It's Christmas Eve. So we get the only hotel available, which was the Navy Lodge.
Which only had one bed.
On the bed.
Only had one bed available.
And you're going to shut up. And so it was still completely platonic.
Unfortunately.
But we stay in a hotel room because there's nowhere to go. And it's the Navy Lodge, and it was literally the only room available. Like, I confirmed this. And so we're sitting there talking, and I'm just like, I don't know what to say. Like, my family just told me I can't bring a Marine home for Christmas who's going to be alone. Like, what do? I was so embarrassed and I was angry and I was hurt because I hadn't ever asked anything like that before. I don't really ask a lot. I was just kind of like, I'm going to work. I'm going to do what I can do. And I was always afraid to ask things. And that was one thing I asked. And I was so hurt and I was so angry. And so I'm sitting there just feeling horrible. And Buddy was the whole time, it's okay. It's okay. Nobody's shooting at me. He's like, I'm home. I am home and I am safe. And I get to go see Annapolis, which I loved. And I lived for 4 years.
How did you feel when you said that?
I've never heard anything like it. It was the most forgiving, genuine, loving thing I think anyone's ever said to me, ever.
Did things change? Like in that moment?
Not yet. Not quite.
Yet? Okay.
Yes, but not quite. Not to what you're thinking. I think it just like, he'll describe this. I had like 7 brick walls up. Well, that certainly knocked a couple.
Took down a couple, yeah.
It certainly knocked a couple. Because I had been, like, just to shortcut a long story. So my senior year of high school was very toxic. Like, I didn't speak to my stepdad a single day. I lived there. So I was very alone in high school. And my mom was playing the middleman to that scenario, which was an awkward situation to be in. It was just a very bad place. But I was in every club and every sport and everything I could do to be away from home and to further myself so I could go to college, because I knew I did not want to be stuck in Amish country. That's not where I'm from. I had no ties there. It stunk real bad. I had the most amazing friends, and I was so thankful for those 4 years because I met some of the nicest people I'd ever met. And I think a lot of people can agree your high school years are pivotal because you start to develop yourself as a person, as an adult, right?
Yeah.
And in my case, as a woman. And I didn't know who I wanted to be. I just knew I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to ever feel stuck. And my mom was always so carefree and happy with whatever situation she was dealt. And she was dealt a big blow. I mean, having the biggest house in the neighborhood, living in Virginia Beach in a prestigious area, to losing everything, watching Goodwill come in a big truck and take it all away, whatever was left that the government didn't. And the only job my stepdad could get was in Amish country, living in an Amish house that was a house cut into thirds. And we had this tiny little 700 square foot section in the back. And that was a very big culture shock, obviously. And my mom dealt it with such grace. And she died before my daughter was born, so I can never share this with her. But as a mom now, I know how hard that must have been. And I know how incredibly difficult of a situation to face. That's shameful. That's hard. That's scary. You don't know what's going to happen. And my brothers left during that because, you know, my dad had always wanted us to move in with him. He was always so gracious about inviting us to stay. He always made it clear that he wanted us. I just felt drawn to my mom. And I got to see her through that. And she always made everything feel like an adventure. And so it never really registered, I think, what happened. I was this 12-year-old, 11-year-old girl. It didn't register. We spent weeks living in hotels because we couldn't get up there in time. She had to make ends meet with her job. And so senior year was me seeing my mom struggling through yet another challenge where now I can't be in communication with her husband anymore. Like, it was just so bad. And the crazy thing is I learned from her how to be happy in any environment. And so in high school, I latched onto every friend I could. I made connections with every person that I could. And I had everyone else driving me home. Everyone else I would stay the night with. I just would start spending night with my friends and making fun nights out of it and doing sleepovers. And, you know, at the end of the year, I remember being flattered, but also hurt that I was voted happiest of my class. And that is my tendency. I tend to put on a happy face and I tend to see the positive in everything. And I was probably one of the most hurting people in that school. It's one of the most broken, like sad inside people. But I knew how to fake it. I knew how to be happy. And I find like if you fake a smile and make someone laugh, it makes you happier. And so that's what I learned. I learned how to make other people happy, which in turn made me happy. And all I knew was I needed to get out and I needed to get my own job and pay my way through school and do whatever it took. That's why I worked 80-hour work weeks at the Naval Academy, because I needed to save up money to start going to college. And in all of that turmoil and all of that trauma is what led me to the Naval Academy, which is what led me to Buddy. So in this moment, fast forward to the hotel room.
Good story.
And Buddy's saying, I'm not usually a good storyteller.
You're killing it. I was like, is she going to tie this back in? And then that was like an effortless, like boom,
spaghetti.
let's drop it back in. Killer. Keep going.
Well, now you made me lose my
I know. That was the whole idea.
So now in the hotel room, and I'm sitting here thinking, look at what he just said to me. My family, who has been, you know, loving and supportive and amazing in so many ways, but also I've been hurt and I've been burned and I've been pushed aside and neglected. And I've always asked, am I actually loved? Am I actually wanted? Like those questions as a kid, I've repeated in my head over and over and over again. And here is this man who I know wants to date me. Like he never not made that clear from like 17 years old, which is how old I was when I met him. I was 17. He never made that not clear. And I knew that, but he did it in a charmingly loving, funny way. And his humor is what drew me in always. I loved that because that made me happy, right? I was drawn to his positivity. And in such a dark situation where my family has now just rejected him on Christmas, and the only thing that he has to say is, it is okay. Everything's going to be okay. I am not being shot at. We're in Annapolis. I'm with you. You invited me here. I got to see your home. I got to spend more time with you. I get to walk around the streets. It'll be great. We'll make a great Christmas of it. I'll catch you afterwards. Have a great time with your family. We got to do this. It'll be fine. Wall after wall, right? Like knock those walls down. Then Christmas morning happens. And I don't even want to talk about it because I'm still traumatized by this day. But Buddy, to not have to wheel a suitcase around everywhere, he puts his necessities, because he's going to spend the night at a friend's house, in the only thing that made logical sense, which makes no sense, was a black trash bag. And I think, did you share this story?
I did.
So he puts his stuff in a black trash bag.
Past the West Street Walker.
And I drive him to Annapolis, where I proceed to drop him off on Christmas morning, because that's what he asked. And he's like, I'll walk in around the Naval Academy.
I thought a lot of stuff would be open. I really did, but nothing was open. Nothing.
Well, obviously, it's Christmas. But to be fair, we figured there's going to be some midshipmen that are still home.
There'd be some like heathens or atheists that are still open, you know? But no, everybody's very Christian, I guess.
Apparently in Annapolis. So I proceed to drop him off, and then I drive to my dad's house. And I can tell you, it was the most still to this day, and I am 39 years old, awkward, uncomfortable day I've ever experienced in my life. I walk in and my dad and my brothers won't speak to me. They won't even look at me. So I'm like, okay. And here I am with presents because I'm a giver. And even though I have no money and I'm struggling to even afford heat, which I can't do, I buy presents because that's the way I can show
Still
up.
do. You still do. She buys presents for
People
everybody.
like presents, even though it's like my lowest love language. I like to give gifts. But anyway, so here I am delivering gifts under the tree so we can celebrate Christmas together and no one's talking to me. And my stepmom is so upset for me that she's crying. And then I start crying. And then my dad's upstairs grumbling. And then my brothers have disappeared. And that's our Christmas morning. And we eventually make it downstairs and we eventually have the most awkward, quiet Christmas I've ever experienced and encountered. And I mean, it's cordial. We're okay. Like we're trying to get through the day is essentially what it was. And then thank gosh, our normal tradition is then we leave and go see a movie. At least we could get out and spend a couple hours seeing a movie. Did you talk about this? Yeah, I thought you did. So then we go to the movie theater as a family, as tradition, and we're usually early, but because the morning was so toxic, we were now late. And we go all the way to the back in this dark theater as the previews have already started to sit in the only seats that are available. And as I'm walking up and the commercial or the previews flash and I can see freaking Buddy's face highlighted on TV. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And I don't remember much. I think I blacked out. I remember shaking. I tend to shake when I'm nervous. I went internal and I started shaking and I told my stepmom, I call her Miss Ellen, even now, 30 years later, I call her Miss Ellen. And I was like, oh my God, look who it is. And she goes, no way. Did you know that? And I was like, no, I didn't know that. Of all the movies, of all the time.
It's like 6 movies.
What's the movie, by the way?
Alien versus
AVP.
Predator.
Oh.
Obviously, on Christmas Day, you're going to see Alien
versus Predator.
I mean, we watched pretty aggressive movies like growing up. So I was always into that kind of stuff too. My stepmom hated every second of those things. But like everybody else had a great time, except that day, obviously. And there's Buddy. And I could not believe it. And of all the seats in the movie theater. And that's why I was like, God just was like laughing down on us. He just knew what he was doing all along.
He was putting all these things in place so the walls would come down is what it was.
It really was. And Buddy looked at me. He was, he just like makes this face. And then I remember, again, I literally black out. And the next thing I know, he's gone.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there shaking. And then I look down, he's gone. I thought he went to go get refreshments. He never came back. I called him right away afterwards. He was like, I couldn't even handle. I couldn't.
It's a little bit too
I'm
weird
hearing your
for me.
brothers and your dad behind me, and that was just too much. And so we talk a lot that day. He's on his way to a friend's house and stays the night. I'm just going to say what was really happening. He was breaking up with his girlfriend at the time, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
So the remaining walls were there for a reason. So for everyone who's judging me right now.
Oh, yeah.
He was still dating somebody
I wicked overlapped. I would have overlapped like crazy. I was dating this girl that I met in Okinawa. And, I dated her on and off for a little while. And I for sure. I will raise my hand in the air and say I was not the most honorable, sort of dude.
Him trying to be like, yeah, look at her, give me a hard time. No, he was dating somebody, so it wasn't an option. Yeah. But that didn't mean I couldn't love him as a person.
So my final romantic gesture was to break up with my other girlfriend.
On Christmas Day.
On Christmas Day.
The gift of giving.
Hey, if you want to show a girl you care about her, break up with your other girlfriend. I mean, that's the lesson here. I think that's the lesson.
Just don't do it like that. Yes. So the next morning... We link back up. So obviously I immediately say goodbye to my family and I'm like, okay, I'm out. I was going to stay. Obviously I'm not staying now. So I go to meet him. I pick him back up and we head back to Philadelphia. And I remember in that moment, I've never been more embarrassed. I've never been more hurt. I've never felt more shamed. And even still, after spending Christmas cold and lonely and frozen and carrying a trash bag, nodding to the homeless man as he's walking down the street, embarrassed by my family as we go to a movie theater and he's so mortified he gets up and leaves, then goes to stay the night at a friend who welcomed him in last minute on Christmas Day while he's breaking up with his girlfriend. All of this happening on Christmas Day. I put him through that. And I felt so responsible for what I imagined was one of the worst days he's ever had in his entire life. And we spent the car ride back to Philly just talking, and he the entire time was like, this is not your fault. You did nothing wrong. You did everything right, everything the best that you could. You had to go to see your family. You had to spend Christmas with them. Because I started feeling guilty. I was like, who does that? Right. Like, who lets the family win in this scenario, right? And truthfully, I was scared of my dad. I didn't know what would happen. And I care a lot about family. And our family's pretty disjointed as it is. And to them hate me further, or to find another thing wrong with me, because that's how I saw it. Like, and so then I'm like mad at myself on top of it all. And he was like, you've done nothing wrong. I'm thankful to be alive. I had a great time. And he, of course, he spins it and shows the positivity in that. And later come to find out, positivity is my number one strength and something that I actually physically require in life. And that spoke to me in a way that no one's ever spoken to me before, other than my mom. And wall again. And then he's like, and by the way, so now we make it back to Philly. And he's like, I just want you to know this doesn't mean anything. I'm not putting pressure on you, but out of respect, I've broken up with my girlfriend.
Yeah. Yeah. She still we had never done anything. She'd never shown any indication that she wanted a romantic relationship. Not really, other than just friends. But I eventually, here's one of the things too, is I was not, I'm so happy that she didn't date me when I was at the Naval Academy, because I told you this on the other podcast. I was cheating on my girlfriends. I was not a good person. I was not acting like a mature adult or as a man. And I remember as I lifted off on the plane from Kabul in Afghanistan, I said, if given the chance, I will act like a real man, and a real man does not fool around, and a real man honors and cherishes a woman and treats her right. And so, I just, after the Christmas thing, I just was thinking to myself, I was like, what am I doing? One, what am I doing to Hachan, the other girl? What am I doing to her? And what am I doing to her? And what am I doing to myself? And what am I doing to my relationship with God? And it didn't, I think I matured at that point, and I passed that level of maturity that you have to pass in order to become, in my opinion, an actual man. And so I was like, this isn't right. And no matter what happens with Kimberly, it's not right to be doing this. And so that's why I broke up with her. We spin it in a funny way because it can be funny, but it was actually really serious. And so that's what I told her.
I also think that it's incredible for both of you to share that story, because it's like we all go through our hardships, and life is not easy. Like every day is challenging. You got to keep your core values. Like at the end of the day, we're the ones that are looking at ourselves in the mirror every night. Gives you perspective.
Absolutely.
But when we got back to the apartment in Philly, that was a different ball game altogether. And you know why? Jim Carrey
always and forever will be our favorite. The Mask.
Yeah, we watched The Mask. We got back there and we were like, let's watch a movie together on the couch. And we watched The Mask, and there were no more walls.
There were no more walls. I think it was the last.
We made out on the couch.
It was
That's what we mean by that.
That's right.
We made out on the couch.
That's what Buddy was waiting for. Right there was that moment right there. He's like, yes!
Winning. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now my face is red.
That's all we did, to be fair, is made out. But nevertheless,
the built-up anticipation. I mean, there had to be winning.
Yeah.
That was, there had to be winning.
There had to be a win after that. Yeah.
Yes.
It was definitely a win after that.
Yeah. It was the greatest night ever. Yeah. I mean, it was still in the scheme of things, relatively platonic, but it was almost like, there's a chasm between not being intimate with someone and being intimate with someone. Right. There's a chasm. There's everything over here from I don't know you at all to we're really good friends to whatever, blah, 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 blah. Right. And then there's you're kissing. And then there's everything, right? Those are the chasm between those two. You can ask any guy who's been in the friend zone. It's gargantuan.
It's
so
huge.
We leapt over that chasm. And even though we were just kissing, it was the most wonderful, outflow of emotion and connection.
That's what it was about.
That's what it was about.
Connecting on a different level for the first time.
Yeah,
well, 1,000, hearing that story, it's an emotional bond is that emotional journey and that connection that you had during that, just hearing both sides of it. I'm like, how did all those things kind of mess into it? It's incredible when you hear it. So what does the next day look like? So thank goodness Jim Carrey, The Mask, the couch.
That very thing.
Both Bruce and Jim. Just want to say thank you to both of you guys.
Yeah. And Bruce Willis, Jim Carrey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah. The
Movies are a
impactful
thing.
movies.
Movies have been and continue to be our thing that
A
brings us
huge
together
part
a
of
lot.
what we do.
Oh,
We love
that's-
movies. Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask what your favorite movie is before we end this. So the next morning happens. How are you both feeling?
Was that when your flight? Yeah, that was
I
your
had to
flight.
leave the next day.
Okay.
Top of the world, right? You couldn't hold
Right?
me down, right? And I mean, I think so. Leaving her at the airport was not awesome, right? Because it was like, man, we just finally, like have reached this like level of feeling and emotion and love that I've never experienced. Probably you had never experienced that level as well. I know for me, I can only speak for me personally, that I was like, whoa, this exists. I didn't know this level of good feeling existed. And then it's like, okay, got to go back to the desert, 29 Palms. And who knows?
3 time zones away.
3 times. Yeah. And so that sucked. But I'm pretty sure I told you I loved you at
You
the
said
airport.
you're falling in love.
Falling in love.
It was
with you.
very classic.
That's what it
by the
was.
way,
Yeah.
Because it's not coming out to say it, but it's saying, just so you know, I'm leaning towards that. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah.
In a movie, in a book, that was very classy.
Yeah, it was classy. Class.
And I said it back.
I had no idea you were such a romantic.
I
buddy.
know. That's
Like,
what I'm
wow.
saying.
Okay.
Class,
All right.
class.
Yeah.
Is that what the master class is going to be about?
I'm holding a master class on love.
And all the tips of resilience.
So Buddy flies back to 29 Palms. And how does this family...
That's where it all begins, really.
Right.
Because now we're talking on the phone at all times that we can. I mean, obviously he works and the time zone happens and I'm in school. I work 5 jobs because
Right.
I have to, right? Philadelphia is expensive and I'm going to school.
We would speak
So-
2 to 3 hours a day, every
Wow.
single
It
day.
was so late at night. Because I would go to school
Yeah.
and then work all day. So I would get home late, but that was 3 hours earlier for him. And he would just be getting home from the base. And so we would work 2 to 3 hours until I literally fell asleep. So
We would talk
I
for 2
slept
to 3
like
hours,
5 hours.
Yeah, I would talk her to
We
sleep
would talk.
every night.
And so what that did was now we're developing a new relationship on a different level and getting to know each other in a completely different way, and all through communication. And I can tell you, like, that was 4 months of that before we actually, I think, decided to start dating. And then 2 months after that, I move out. And then a month later,
We're married.
So it's a crazy.
Whoa.
And then,
Whoa. You got married within 6 months?
yeah,
It was pretty fast.
That's awesome.
Well, we were dating, maybe, yeah.
at the San
Started dating
Bernardino
in
County
April.
Courthouse. We eloped.
I decided to sell everything I owned because I realized
You burn your ships.
he's done everything he can do. Now
Got
it's
it.
up to me.
Okay.
And if I am going to take this seriously, he's on the West Coast because he has to be. That's where he's stationed.
Right.
He lives in California. I've always wanted to go to California. I've always been told I would love California. And I was always called the Sunshine Girl. My whole life.
What? How come you belong in California? Because I was going to ask how you ended up in San Diego. So how come you always
I don't-
belonged in California?
I was just told that my whole life. And I've never
She
set
loves the
foot in it.
sun. She loves the beauty of nature, the ocean, things like
Right.
that. And she looks like a girl from LA.
Because that makes any sense.
That-
What
that's
does
why-
Roosevelt
that's-
look like?
You?
So, but because Virginia Beach, I think, like Virginia Beach has a very San Diego feel.
Got it.
And I
Okay.
loved it. And yellow is my favorite color. Like I love sunshine. I love warmth. I hate being cold. Hence the heat bill was a really big deal. But I just realized like I'm on this hamster wheel and I can't work enough to put myself through school fast enough. And I was like, I know I want to do more, but I'm not getting anywhere. And he's like, well, what do you have to lose? Come out to California. He's like, it's pretty, he said, it's sunny and sandy and beautiful and all the things. And he's like, I can help you get a job. I can help you. I can be here and we can be closer. And my girlfriend at the time, who I had gone to school with, was moving to San Diego. So we're like, perfect. We'll live together. We'll do that. Well, I sell everything. I pack everything I could fit into my Volkswagen Beetle, drive across country, smack dab in the middle of 2008. And if you remember 2008, what happened?
The real estate.
Everything.
Everything crashed. The entire
Job market
crashed.
just imploded.
Now, I had my associate's degree at this point. What I was working towards was my bachelor degree, but I also still needed a job. I needed to be able to support myself so I could put myself through school and finish. But the only colleges anywhere close to the base where he lived was an associate college, which I already had my degree. Everything else was too far, and that's where the jobs were bar to none. There was nothing available. You applied and you were like number 80 in line, and everybody else had degrees upon degrees upon degrees. So I couldn't find a job. And I was like, I'm not dumb. I'm not going to go put myself in debt with an apartment in a city I've never been with a roommate that doesn't have a job either. and like try to get myself through school in this situation. Like, this was dumb. Like in the middle of a market crash, which I've never experienced before. Well, he's going to be 2 to 3 hours away because 29 Palms is in the middle of absolute nowhere. So anyway, so he was like, why don't you just stay here? You can live rent free for a little bit. I have a second bedroom. We weren't married yet, guys. Okay.
Stayed in the second bedroom.
I have a second bedroom. He's like, you can stay and then, try to find a job. And so anyway, a month in,
we were driving down. So 29 Palms is in the desert that's on a plateau. And so like you drive down to Palm Springs. And so we were driving down, it's called the Morongo Valley. And, I just turned to her and I was like, just out of the blue, I think I just turned to her and I was like, why aren't we married? Like, it was that obvious. Like, it was so, like, our relationship was so strong, so fast. And it wasn't a flash in the pan kind of thing. It was talking for 2 to 3 hours. It was, we've been friends for 5 years kind of thing, right? We knew each other and everything. And so I was just like, it was the most obvious question in the world. Like, why are we not married? So I didn't say, would you marry me? I said,
I was not proposed to.
Yeah, well, you were a year later.
All.
A year later you were when I gave you a ring.
A year after being married.
On the mountaintop.
On our 1-year wedding anniversary.
On our 1-year wedding anniversary. On the mountaintop. I proposed to her with a ring.
The Buddy romantic coming out again.
A ring that I bought with blackjack winnings.
Yes. That somebody else gave you.
Yep.
So I have a question for you. What was different about Kimberly that you're like, how come we're not married? What was it different about her?
Than every other girl?
Yeah.
It was that one, the level of connection that I had with her was far superseded physical, probably in large part because the physical like intimacy didn't happen until way later. And so we had multiple layers of connection, and I could see that she was somebody who was that had a lot of greatness inside of her. She had a ton of potential for growth. And I knew for the longest time that I wanted to do something great. Even when I was in 4th grade, I put in the yearbook, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, something great, something big. Right. And so I needed a partner. And that's one of the reasons, unfortunately, that I broke up with several girls along the way, is because I knew that they had very small ambitions in life. And she had virtually limitless ambitions. She had no clue what they were. Neither did I. But she was somebody, when I would talk about my dreams and I would talk about like whatever, it didn't scare her. And when I talked about, like, we were renovating that house in 29 Palms at the time, like, and I was like, we need to re-roof this thing. And she's like, Roger that. Give me the nail gun. Right. And so we need to figure out how to, retile. And it's like, okay, let's figure out how to retile. Let's look on YouTube and let's get a book from Home Depot and let's spread and let's retile. And right. But the point is, like, everything that we needed to do and risk, we ended up also, deciding that we were going to use the money we had saved up for our wedding to buy that investment property and get married at the courthouse. Who does that? Right. And so I knew that this was somebody that she and I together could create the biggest life we could possibly ever want. And she also happened to be the prettiest girl that I'd ever dated. So there's that, right? I mean, it's not nothing, right? I mean, we want to talk about, like, loving somebody for who they are inside, and all that's amazing. But let's be honest, we live in a world too where we're motivated by beauty. Right. And I was more physically attracted to her than I'd ever been physically attracted to anybody, ever. And so anyway, it was the whole package, I guess, is the point. Is the whole package. Like, I was like, man, if you want to talk about like shooting for like the top of the heap and what you're going to get, like, I just can't conceive anybody that hits all of those wickets from and she's not somebody, because for a lot of reasons of the way that she grew up, she never grew up with a hot girl attitude. Do you know what I'm talking about, right? Like that is a big turnoff for most serious guys.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're wanting to do something more than just sleep with a girl, she needs to have substance other than just be pretty. And so she had substance for days and also beauty. So it's the total package. And so it just, for me, it was an obvious.
Kimberly, for you, in that moment, you're driving down Morongo. I know. I always get it wrong. I always say it wrong. Always. I know where it is. Driven it. Always say it wrong. You're on Morongo. Buddy turns around to you and says, "How come we're not married?" And you're thinking to yourself,
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. And I think if you know me, which you're learning, you're getting there. I'm not ever one to make rash decisions at that time because I had to take care of myself. I had to protect myself. And I felt on my own really since the end of 11th grade. I was like, I know what I need to do and it needs to be something big. It needs to be something else. And I need to protect myself to make sure this happens. That's why I was scared to date. I didn't date anybody my senior year of high school. I was too scared to creating ties in Amish country, right? Because I had already envisioned my life elsewhere. I was too scared to really get into anything serious as far as jobs because I was like, I don't know really what I want to do. This isn't it. Like, I just know this isn't it. That's why I was in every sport and every club because I was looking for what that would be. And my whole life, it was like protecting myself and being like, there's something else, there's something else, there's something bigger, there's something better, there's more out there, there's more adventure. I'm always adventurous and I'm always open to try something once. Always. I'm very good about whatever it is. I don't care as long as it's not squid. Like, I think I draw a line with slimy tentacles, but like, always will do. Or I've tried mushrooms. My body.
She tells people she's allergic to mushrooms. It's the most hilarious thing. We'll go to a restaurant.
I don't like
and
that.
she'll be like, okay, here's my list of allergies. Mushrooms.
First of all, I do not enjoy doing this.
Mushrooms.
It's not fun to do.
And they're like, oh, you're allergic to mushrooms. You're the only person in the history of the world that's ever been allergic to mushrooms. But they're nice about it.
Mushrooms? But do you love mushrooms? Okay.
Everyone loves
So you either love them or you don't.
She doesn't say, I prefer not to have mushrooms. She says, I'm allergic to mushrooms.
Body
she probably doesn't want questions.
Mushrooms. It rejects them. I will
feel like an idiot
gag
when you say that.
I will start gagging. If you want me to gag with you at dinner, I will be happy to eat mushrooms.
Oh, man.
I've literally.
All right. Anyway, so yeah, squid.
Thank you.
Sorry, back on track.
No
I don't
tentacles.
even remember what I was saying.
No tentacles, no mushrooms.
Tentacles.
We'll try anything once.
Thank you. I would. I was like, I'll try anything once. So that was always my mindset. And I was like, for whatever reason, and we're in the car and we're mid-renovating the house, we're roofing, we're tiling, because I quickly realized when I got there and he was like, oh yeah, I'm renovating. He had no clue what he was doing.
No.
I was like, what do you mean you pulled up a tree, which by the way is illegal. You're not allowed to pull up Joshua trees.
Thanks for telling the whole world that I killed a Joshua tree. They number Joshua trees in 29 Palms.
Do.
And they tag them and they're like, they're endangered. It's like, do you know how ugly Joshua trees are? Why would you protect something that's so ugly?
They stab you.
They stab you. And so I killed it in the middle of the night. I dug it out and then I put it in a truck. I had a friend help me. So there's an accomplice. And then we drove out to the middle of the desert and we dumped it in the desert.
Your friend into the
yeah.
No,
but it's statute of limitations. No, this was 2007. So that was 17 years ago. Statute of limitations is 10 years.
You're good.
So California, I killed a Joshua tree and I don't regret it.
So he's like, I'm doing landscape. And he's like, I'm focusing on that. So I get there. The dude has no clue. And it's very charming, by the way, because to his point, he works really hard and he's very dedicated. And so I grew up watching HGTV because clearly you're an expert once you've watched the show. You know all the things.
Yeah.
And, my dad has so much skill with working on houses. And so he's just naturally does that. My stepdad worked on historic homes for years. So I would do that with him in Norfolk, Virginia at the time. So I had my hands dirty since I was a child. Like I was hammering nails in instead of playing with Barbies for a very long time. So like the idea of doing that stuff excited me. So here I am, I'm in 29 Palms. Life was already exciting. It was already adventurous. It was already fun doing stuff that I never thought I would do, and he loves to challenge me. Case in point, on a podcast. He loves to challenge me. He gets off on it, like putting me in positions I am not comfortable in all the time. And here we are driving and we just start talking about all these ideas and where our future is going to be. And no one's ever had that conversation with me before. Like, what's our future going to look like? Our future. Mm-hmm. It was always me. What is my future going to be? How am I going to do it? And I thought it was so cute. I had these rules. Like I had to have a career by 25. I had to I wasn't going to get married until I was 30 because I needed to be able to support myself. I wouldn't start having kids until I was 32. The cute rules that women put in their minds. And then I'm 23 at the time, driving down Morongo, and he's like, why are we married? And it was almost like the only way I can describe it, and this has been true with every big decision I've ever made in my life, because I've made a lot of life-altering, pivotal decisions. It was like God just put this giant peace over me and was like, why don't you? It's not going to getting your family together and doing the traditional court wedding in a church. It's none of that stuff. And God was just like, why don't you? It's never a decision I would have thought I would have ever made, ever in a million years. Mm-hmm. And I just knew the moment he asked, in that moment, it was no question. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. So full circle, I did it again. See that? Mm-hmm. I don't know. And it just felt right. In that very moment, it felt right. Because he was my best friend.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd been my best friend since I was 17, really. Mm-hmm. We had a connection I'd never had with another human being, not just a guy, but a human being before. Mm-hmm. And that always remained. That's why I missed him. When he deployed, I missed him a lot. And I missed that fun. I missed that guy that made me laugh and would put me in my place and call me Michelin Man. And it was funny.
Oh, that's freaking hilarious.
And that was Buddy. And that was so refreshing for me. And I loved so much about him. And then now you added the element of true love. And why would I ever say no? I don't know. It just felt right. And it felt really dumb to think that we're going to fly our family, who was not in a financial position to ever fly out, nor would we want them to fly out to 29 Palms.
Right.
Right. There's nothing to do there. I mean, there is much more now, but definitely was not 13 or 15 years ago. And so we didn't want to get married in 29 Palms. We knew we were there for a couple more years. And then potentially moving back to the East Coast, why wait several years? That's dumb. So the best decision really was just go to the courthouse, save the money, put it towards the first investment, use the cash flow of that investment to pay for the wedding. I mean, that seemed, at least to me, it seemed like the most financially smart thing to do.
And so how does the white feather name come about? Because there's two different. I think this is a great segue. Now that we're married.
You told this story, yeah.
How does this happen? When do you actually create White Feather? What year was it?
I think that was on the way back from the courthouse, wasn't it?
No.
That was the decision.
So White Feather Road is right where the police station is.
Oh, get out.
We found,
sure.
He always says this. We found this out years later. I am 100% positive.
Find out.
I am 100%. No, you're right. The road is there. But we didn't notice that until years later. That's why it was so funny. So we're driving home. So we go to the courthouse, and I'm wearing a random white skirt and a shirt, just a random color shirt. And you're wearing a t-shirt and jeans, I think.
Been my go-to for the longest.
It has been ever since. And we're on our way back, and we're like, okay, we're doing this. We are going to take that money and we're going to put it on an investment. Well, now we got to now we're professional investors. Obviously, we're real timers.
Because we just said we were.
We just said we were. And we decided, so what are we going to call our business? People, now we have a business, what are we going to call it? And so we spent the whole drive home, because it's a couple hours, right? And there's absolutely nothing to look at at all. We're bored out of our minds. So let's come up with a business name. And so I just brought out a pad, because this is back when you had paper, you didn't have smartphones, and we're writing on paper just every name we can come up with. And my inspiration my whole life when it comes to design and real estate was always my aunt. So she was my mom's sister. She passed when I was 6, but she was an interior designer who traveled the world. And she always had this beautiful, incredibly pristine white house. Everything inside it was white. Everything was non-touchable. Just remember that. My grandma, she had helped my grandma decorate the white room, which I was also not allowed to touch. But it always had this idea of just beauty and design. And I always attributed white with her. And so we're coming home in the wedding. I'm wearing my white skirt, and I'm thinking of design, and I'm thinking real estate. And I thought of my aunt. And I've always, since I was 6, felt like she was my guardian angel. As a kid, you always think guardian angels are cool. And I remember every time I would get a helium balloon, I would write a letter to her. And I'm sorry, you guys, I would let it go into the sky. But that was my connection as a kid to my aunt, is writing a letter to her. And I always had that connection my whole life. And so now I felt in those moments, those those big life-altering moments, I felt she was with me every time. And in that moment, I looked at my white skirt, and we probably drove by the sign.
I think we saw the sign, and it was a subconscious
which is what gave me the idea, because what does a guardian angel have? Is white feathers. And white feather just popped in my head as clear as could be. Like I just saw an angel's wings.
It was your idea first. I do remember that.
I know it was.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I can get behind that.
Get behind
the number
that.
one sniper in the Marine Corps had a white
literally
feather in his
just
cap,
read.
and he would use that to taunt his
So
enemies.
there's a book called
I can do that.
One Shot, One Kill by Carlos Hathcock. And I had literally just finished reading that the week before. And it was fresh in my mind. And, you know.
Angel versus sniper, you know.
Just
A marriage made in heaven.
It just fit, right? I was like, that's cool. We can definitely do some stuff.
So
Do you know how many
You
people?
have beauty and love in your heart, and Buddy's like, yeah.
Do you remember? So, do you know how many people in the years since then have come up and been like, White Feather, what an interesting name. Is that like an angel? None. Do you know how many people have been like, is that Carlos Hathcock? Like 7.
Okay, there you go.
So,
it's why I let him tell the story. It's so cute.
perfection.
Yeah. And you should start wearing a hat and just put a white heather in it.
Okay, Buddy, no, okay. They said it. So the bet is, how do we get Buddy with a white feather?
That's okay. That's what we're gonna start doing.
Okay,
now.
that's hilarious.
Little pin, little barrette, unclipped ears.
This is why we don't let her have ideas.
Little earring will pierce your ear.
I've got a filter through all of her ideas.
I wasn't.
I've got a filter that Kimberly's ideas come in here, and like one comes out, and it's the white feather name. All the rest of them just kind of.
Not true. I have really good ideas.
Tell me one. Those pants?
You can't put
those burlap sack pants? Were those? Is that a good idea?
Would you?
Is that a good idea?
Green on
I
your
feel like I don't. It's like the light.
Well, you probably have a stain somewhere. He usually does. Anyway.
Great pants.
They're very comfortable.
I grew up on a farm, and we used to use those to haul around corn. Like, you remember the corn system?
Buddy said Kimberly's pants looked like a potato sack.
Do you remember the sacks where you used to like hop in like grade school?
Those are burlap. This is linen. That is two very different
Okay.
things. Although I will give you the stitching could
do some work.
So you come up with the name White Feather. You love investing. You have bigger pictures. How come you decide that it's not just enough for us to change our lives? How does this all lead to the vision that you're living today, the impact that you're making today? Because I just want to give you some feedback. When I meet people and they talk about Kimberly and Buddy, there's energy, there's passion, and anybody that watches your story can tell, holy shit, like, damn, all right. They're living like a true love story. How come you're sharing it with the rest of the world? What impact are you making together? And when Buddy was talking about it, this isn't about, it's a passion project. Like you're out there to change lives and make a difference. So how did you come together with that vision?
I've told my side of it already.
I think it started honestly just small. It started with friends watching us, and they're like, that's awesome. Like, I want to do that. And we were at this time, he was full on in deployments, right? And so he was deploy. And I was back home. This was in San Diego now. And I was going to every RIA, which are the real estate meetings, every class, every training, everything I could possibly go to, because I was educating. And I was in full education mode. And I was like, okay, all right, we've done our little deals. It takes a lot of work to get one deal. I mean, you know how hard it is. And we were like, but we want more. And so let's educate. And then we're going to go put the offers in. And then we're going to educate. And then we're going to learn a new strategy. And we're going to go practice that. And then we're going to educate some more and practice that. So we started realizing that there was so much involved. And we saw people right and left all around us in analysis paralysis. They were just learning and learning and learning and spending so much money, but never actually applying any of it. And we're like, well, that money that you just spent on your 7th course, you could have just bought a house with that. And now you're educating again, but you're not making the money back in any way. And so it became frustrating and like hard to watch that. And people that we started to really care about, because these people started to become my friends. But more importantly, it was just people that we loved, people that were in our lives and were like, hey, dude, if you ever got a deal, like we'd love to partner with you. And so we're like, sure. Like we started marketing and once in a while we would get another house or we get a couple at a time. Or we were like, we're tapped out right now. Like, why don't you do this one? We'll wholesale it to you. Because that was another strategy that we learned. Let's practice our first wholesale and wholesale to a friend. And it kind of became a fun thing because we're helping them get them deals. I remember Mike and Dan were the first friends. And we helped them get a deal that I was the official, which I would never do again. I'm really bad at negotiating, but I was the negotiator, inspector,
Jitter, you did this comparative market analysis.
Comparative market analysis. I wrote up a 4-page report that took me 3 days to do it. I made it look very professional. And I had the communication with them. I negotiated off because there was like some stuff that I
helped them buy it with their IRA.
And I helped our friends learn how to buy it with their IRA. Well, I mean, by we, I mean Buddy. I usually take credit for things that he does. But he was deployed, so I can. And so, yeah, and they get to partner on this deal. And it was a great deal. And they had built-in equity. I think it was like $10,000 built in the moment they bought it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that was sexy. Like that was a really cool feeling.
I think you made $5,000 on that. I think that was the whole
Yeah,
thing.
I think so. And so I just got paid for something in a new way. Didn't know I could wholesale. And I learned something new. I helped friends do something. And that I
forgot about that.
became like the foundation of that felt really good. Because now it's not about us. And it's not always going to be able to be just me and you because we're not swimming in dough. Like we would budget $7 shampoo. I remember this. I'm still very bitter about this. He would make me use Walmart shampoo for like the first year because we were budgeting. Okay, I still resist budgets for this reason. But we lived very, very, very strictly because every penny that we made, again, we being him, I worked at Napa Auto Parts driving around greasy car batteries for $7 an hour. So I didn't exactly bring in very much money.
Hey, you made a bottle of shampoo an hour.
I did. And I did that.
Nice.
I actually got that job specifically so I didn't have to buy that shampoo anymore. But anyway, so.
$7 seems like a lot for shampoo. Oli wouldn't know.
I never have a bad hair day. I never have a bad hair day.
Is that the
people
key?
People wake up and say, I have bad hair days. When do you ever see
And you've never
say
complained
that?
about it once. So
Never.
Oh, life hack.
But yeah, so we had budgeted so much for so long, but we could still only do so much ourselves. And that's only so much fun. Right. And our friends just loved the idea of real estate because real estate is really sexy. It's fun. It's exciting.
Everybody loves real estate.
And HGTV at the time was the #1 show channel, I think. And everybody was watching one of the shows on there. So all of our friends were like, let's do it. Let's do something. Oh, okay, let's learn a new strategy. Like
What
how
year
we
was
can
this?
partner. What year did you deploy? 2011, I think, right?
11, 12, 13, and 14.
Okay.
And 14, yeah. I mean, we got to San Diego and he left. And then he came home for a couple months, went to training back and forth, went to Afghanistan for a site survey, came back and then left again. I mean, it was just like madness.
Yeah, the whole time I was deployed pretty much the whole time.
Wow.
And my job was educate and employ our knowledge, really. So I would be doing like educating, putting the efforts towards researching the deals. I would send him stuff. I would email it. Then he would wake up in the morning, run his numbers because it's a 12-hour time difference. He would run the numbers, take him a little bit because obviously he stole the job, run the numbers, email me back. I would wake up the next morning, get the numbers, make those offers non-emotionally because it's a number. I mean, in the end of the day, an investment's numbers, right? And so I learned how to remove the emotion behind it because it's not a pretty house with a white picket fence anymore. It's numbers, right? Like it has to make sense. And that was when I took down our first 5-plex.
With our IRA.
That was still my favorite deal, of which we needed partners. We needed friends to come on board. And one of our friends who we met through the classes was able to teach me about land trust. Didn't know what a trust was, didn't know how that worked. And so it just became this fun thing. Like as we're learning together and we're creating this cool team and this partnership, I'm getting to do some really cool stuff without the number running, which I wasn't good at it. I hated doing. He gets to be involved while overseas fighting for our country and still feel a part of it. And we get to bring our friends in along the way. And that just started a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then he comes home. We spend a couple years pouring into self-development. We get moved up to Northern California, which was Monterey, Carmel area. Okay. He's going to school. We tried some other things. We got into a little bit of network marketing, learned a ton about
sales and networks and
how
connections.
To just be a good person. And when you're selling to people, you're connecting with them first right? And the sale will happen if it happens. But we learned so much. I'm so thankful for those few years. And we were trying to do real estate, it just wasn't a good fit up there. But all of those lessons still applied. We still were excited. We still couldn't wait to come back. And we had a 1% chance to come back to San Diego.
Had to fight for it. Because you get
1% chance to come back.
1%?
There was one job, his entire cohort. And the cohort all had that one role, that one job.
Yeah, almost everybody got sent to the Beltway in DC because that's where most of the jobs were for payback tours for the discipline that I had learned. And there was one job at the MEF here at Camp Pendleton, one job, and everybody wanted it. And it was a dogfight. I mean, it was a knockdown, drag out dogfight.
Because it's San Diego?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. I mean,
I'm
just
I'm
confirming.
going to go to
And we'd
Washington,
already been
D.C.
here,
or
so.
San Diego. It's like traffic and a hot summer and a cold winter and congestion and all of that. And by the way, a job that is probably less fulfilling, just like a payback tour job that's probably less fulfilling versus San Diego, Camp Pendleton. And I mean, that's the dream, right? Every Marine wants to go to San Diego and Hawaii.
Okay.
And so, but we ended up getting it. That's a whole other story, but we ended up getting it. And then this is where I think you'll pick it up. All that buildup that she's talked about, all of it came together in this perfect star align moment that I'll let you tell, but it was ultimately a relationship, a connection that you made that in my mind, there is no way that White Feather or VFF or anything that we've done would look anything like what it does now. Thousands of people's lives have been changed because of this one meeting with this one person that she created the connection.
So people had been following our journey for a long time. And when I was active in the real estate groups, I was on the board for one of the groups. So I got to help meet all the speakers and like work with them on their speeches, figure out what they wanted to talk about, establish that connection with them, right? So I got to have the best conversations, the one-on-ones, right? But I got to know a lot of really cool people. And one of those people that I got to meet, her name was Karen Hall. She ran a RIA up north, and she was really good friends with a guy named Matt Owens, who ran another RIA, another network, another meeting. Is this who you're talking about? I've made a lot of connections. And we got asked to speak. We got asked to share our story. And do I like standing in front of people on
Absolutely.
stage?
You're first volunteer. Who wants to speak? Kimberly, raising her hand.
So Kimberly was like, no, but Buddy sure can. I will gladly go and attend with him. But we're in the speaker room before the meeting starts. And, there's Buddy, because this is what Buddy does. He always rehearses because he cares so much about what he says. He wants to provide value with every word that comes out of his mouth. Clearly, you can tell when he speaks, it's not just a conversation. It's empowering. It's like rock your soul's kind of content, kind of information, like stuff that can change lives. So he's out there pacing, rehearsing, and I'm sitting there with the speakers just talking because I don't have to go on the stage. I'm like, I'm good. Like I've done my part. I made, I got us here. We're good. And I just sat next to one of the speakers, and I remember talking to him, and I was just asking questions. I was like, I've heard about you. I've met you just through a friend, and it sounds really cool what you do. I'd love to hear more about it. And he just starts telling me his business. And when you talk to somebody and you can tell two things, it's about the money or it's about the people. It's about furthering my business and doing what I can to better myself or my mission and what it is that I offer and how I can help people and how many people I can reach, right? I could just clear as day see the difference. And I was like, you need to meet my husband. I was like, he's pacing. So when he's done rehearsing, you need to meet him, give him a chance to do his thing. But I could feel it right then and there that he aligned with what it is that matters. And that's really connecting with people and helping people. It's not getting the top dollar. It's not getting the most money you can squeeze out of a deal, because that's very common in real estate. You can make a lot of money in real estate and you can really screw over a lot of people. And oftentimes they don't even know. And we made a deal from day one. I will never forget this. We saw a friend. Now, I wouldn't even say it's a friend. It's somebody that we were going to do business with, and we backed out the last minute. And we were like, we will never, ever, ever do a deal or make a decision in real estate that we won't be able to sleep on or sleep with that night, ever. It has to feel good.
Costs us a lot of money.
It still costs us.
Okay.
It costs us money every day.
And you opened up a can that I want to that I want to touch on, and this is one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of real estate, industry professionals.
Right.
And I use that loosely.
Neither am I.
Which is...
Neither are we.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Like the reputation in my industry is earned. It's not like people are fabricating and just came up with it. It's a very transactional, very greedy based, egocentric business. I'm not a fan of it. It's not built on experience or people. Those are the rarities. It's not the commonality.
Right.
From your experience, would you, what's your experience? Do you agree with that? And like, how are you trying to change it? How are you trying to make it better?
Everybody can win in real estate. That's what I think drew us in so much and made it. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. Okay. I feel like everybody can win. It's one of those things that if there's, let's say you find a deal and it's a great deal and there's a $20,000 spread there, everybody wins, and it reminds me of Justin, like his story, where he gets this amazing row of 13 properties, which turned out to be 12 locked in deals with so much equity, stupid amount of equity, you don't even know what to do with it. And they had a phone call and was like, guys, who wants in, right? Like let's share the wealth, because that's what it's about. Like he's changing lives because he wants people to be able to have that financial freedom. They fight so hard, come back and struggle to make ends meet. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have to be that hard. And they have a lot of times big chunks of tax-free income that they can do things with, and they go buy a car or they go have a vacation. That's wonderful and special. But how is that furthering your future? Now, I'm the first to say vacations are necessary. Absolutely. But there's a balance, right? And we've always said you have to live in a balance. And so I remember sitting in when he got this phone call and he found out that there was $600,000 of equity in this deal?
$2 million.
$2 million of equity in this deal.
You're talking Ocean's 11?
Yeah.
Yeah, $2 million equity.
$2 million of equity. And he was like, guys, so he sends an email out to White Feather Network and he's like, we have an opportunity that we have so many properties that we can share with you guys. All these people get on this call and it's like stupid awesome. Like I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
I showed him everything. I showed him the contract where we had it locked in. I showed him the appraisal. And you could do the math and see how much equity there's there. And I was like, what do you guys think we should do? And it was a committee. It wasn't like selling them anything. It was like, what do you think we should do? We could buy all of these ourselves, just raise private capital and take them down ourselves. If we do that, then Justin, who gets half of everything, is a millionaire as soon as we close.
Who did all the work to negotiate these deals.
Yeah, he did the work, and then he basically brought it to contract, and then I brought it to close. And I was like, but that won't further the mission of White Feather. That'll just help Justin and me. And so what is the greatest possible, right? The mission of White Feather to help our members build financial freedom. And so collectively, everybody was like, well, why don't you allocate one property to each individual investor and then take a wholesale fee that you and Justin can split? And that's what we did. And that was, that made that was what you were talking about. That made $600,000 in the 2 months that it took to structure that. But we could have made $2 million. The reason, and that's why we say we leave a lot of money on the table by trying to create an abundance-minded community. And that's the answer to your question of how we're combating the greed that's in this industry, is we could have made $2 million, but instead we changed 11 people's trajectory and helped their trajectory go here by basically giving them $100,000 of equity each. We still made plenty of money. It changed Justin's life. It helped, for us, it made a big difference in that moment. That infusion of almost $300,000 helped us launch a community that now has 1,000 people in it, right? And it was a lot of money. The VFF community, Veterans Financial Freedom, is a free community. It costs a lot of money to run a free community, guys. Just in case you were ever wondering, hey, I want to launch a free community out of the goodness of my heart. It costs a lot of money to do that.
Well,
right?
buddy, I think we spend so much time just being in finance talking about just the cost, the actual money. What about your time? I would think that time is way more valuable.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because these events that you guys are putting on, it's not like, hey, let's just do an event, and then the next day you got an event.
Yeah, it's hundreds of hours.
Right.
Oh, we crashed for 3 days after that, too.
Oh, I couldn't imagine.
We crashed for 3 days. We were 60 days straight.
Yeah, it is. It's the time and it's the money. And here's what I tell people, and this is, I think, back to the idea of what drives us as far as our mission goes and why we're doing all of this different stuff. The fact of the matter is we already have made enough money to be able to just live however we want and not have to work, right? Not have to actively work, right? We just manage our portfolio and manage the different loan money here and there and stuff like that, right? Very minimal. We could work 1 hour a day. And most people think that's the goal. And I can promise you 100% as a human, That's not the goal. That is a stepping stone. That is an enabling function that allows you to live in your purpose. And that's the goal. Living in your purpose is different and unique for every person. But I can promise you the most profound purposes that exist are purposes that live to help other people find theirs and help other people live the greatest lives that they can. And that's what our purpose and our mission is for Whitefeather and VFF. And so in order to do that, though, that sounds very kumbaya. And I promise you, there are millions of people that think the same way, but are broke as hell. And I'm sorry, if you're broke, it's very difficult to change other people's lives. I use this all the time. Like even Mother Teresa had sponsorships and donors and people that were funding her, right? Probably the most giving person in the history of the world. She still needed money. And she just didn't work a job to get that money, right? She had people sponsoring her. And so money is a critical enabling function to building a dream. And so with our we have 4 businesses. We have businesses and we do plenty of things that make lots of money. The things that you see that don't make money, like the free communities and the events and various things like that, those are paid for by those other things. Yes, they're what we love, and
That's our passion project.
They create massive impact, and we do it, and it's exhausting, and it's amazing, and everything. But we lost $60,000 on our first event in Vegas. Lost $60,000 and spent hundreds of hours putting it together and 2 days worth of effort, and all that. Now, we're getting better at running events. We're going to really try to break even in the future. But but nevertheless, that's the difference is when you can create a community that feels like, hey, it doesn't have to just be about the transaction and maximizing profit. When you optimize for value instead, and what I mean by that is and she sees this all the time, didn't used to understand it, to be totally transparent, used to question it, and now absolutely understands fully the awesome power of creating value in somebody's life, and you can't do this with takers.
It's because it's not a normal way to think, right?
No.
Most people think inside of a 9-to-5 job box. They think about, I go to work, I do my job, and I come home, and my job is now left there. What you're talking about is impacting people's lives every day at every moment, forever. And that involves a heck of a lot more than just showing up for a few hours, right?
And a lot more than just doing a simple transaction with somebody.
The right thing, whether it means more money out of your pocket. I mean, I've seen him spend money. So he makes negative on deals because it's the right thing. It felt right. There was one time where somebody bought a house and he closed in within 2 weeks. And by the way, learned a lot of this from Matt Owens.
Yes.
Our very first connection. And it's why I said, you can feel the difference when you meet the right people because he cares about people and doing the right thing. And I think
you should have him on this podcast.
Yeah. Oh, he will for sure.
He's phenomenal.
But he learned that because it was a deal that he did with Matt. And I guess a couple weeks after the roof caved in, after close, by the way, that's not, it's closed.
It's not normal. Yeah.
It's not done. Normal. It's rare. Insurance could cover it, but it was the tenant was displaced. It was an expensive headache. It was a mess. And this poor investor was somebody that came from Whitefeather, didn't know what they were doing. They were just excited to make an investment. And it was their first one. And Buddy's like, dude, this doesn't feel right. Can you imagine this being your first investment and this is your introduction to real estate? And Matt, they didn't even blink or flinch. They both split the cost and paid for it and took care of everything. Just like that. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because that's a level of really caring about what you do, right? And caring about people.
And it's not normal. I've had multiple business consultants tell me that I don't run a very good business.
Yeah.
All the time.
Because you're running your business with your heart. And I think that comes into it. There are, I 1000%, this is why I love both of you. And I'll share this just so I've never, ever been in real estate, been in a room and actually felt energy and connection at the level that I have with the people that I've met in the community you guys have created.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And that's a lot coming from you.
That means a lot. Yeah, it does. Because I know you've been in a lot of those rooms.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A lot of those rooms that I would never encourage anyone to go to unless you're go with gear. Like, no, I'm being real with you.
Yeah.
I literally have clients and families that I serve that I'm like, if you go to this real estate, I'm preparing you. You are 1,000% going to be sold, but they're asking to be in the room.
Yeah.
Like, I want to learn boutique hoteling. I want
nothing wrong with that kind of thing.
Just understand who your audience is. These are not people that are relationship centric. They are business centric.
Right. And we do business with people that are business centric. You have to.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just
nothing wrong with
the answer to your question about, we in general feel the same way about real estate agents and loan officers and various things. I don't know too many that are straight, like, not bad people, right? In fact, maybe one or two, they get bad reputations and they fall by the wayside. What you're talking about mostly, though, is people that are just focused on the commission, right?
That's it.
It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means that they are transaction oriented. And I will tell you, that's probably most of them. Even if they start out with idealistic ideas, that's probably ends up being most of them. But
because they have to support.
Because they have to survive. They have to pay for their right. There's no judgment. It's just there are a select few, and I would say it's probably somewhere around the 5 to 10% mark. There are a select few who are relationship, and they tend to be the most successful, interestingly, right? And so we stack those people in our community and in our life, and we hold them up as examples to people, and we try to learn from them and to emulate them.
I think that's it. Is you are the sum of the 5 people you spend your most time with, and we try to follow that in business too. Because if we're doing business and surrounding ourselves with people who challenge us, but also like follow our line, because if all of a sudden we see a partner or a friend doing things that feel shady, is that the kind of influence we want now?
Right.
Maybe not. And we've had to let some of those go, unfortunately. But it's surrounding yourself with the right people, doing the right things, and abundance is a thing. Like it what goes around comes around. And we've seen that so many times.
Yeah. And one of the reasons, Kimberly, I really appreciate you coming on. Like, I hope you had fun, but here's the thing. Like, White Feather to me, as I've gotten to learn the community and get to know both of you, like, that's you guys. It's the two of you. Like, you create, when people talk about White Feather and VFF, they talk about the both of you and all the other great people that are there, but it all starts with the people that created it. So, like, I just think that, especially with the veteran community and military community, it's like there are tools at your disposal. And I feel terrible because I have a lot of military families that I help, and they don't want to trade their time for money. They want to live their best life, but they just don't know how. You're providing that how, and then with the actual programs, it's like, look, there's mental, like you started just going through this myself. It's that mental. Conquer your mentality first. Get that wellness, get your vision in line, do your vision board, start within, so that way you can change the external.
Yeah.
Because you can't change the external until you've done that.
Seriously.
Yeah. Or you're changing a mess. Like,
it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Yeah, I know people who, they've discovered a way to, to get transactions done. But I was speaking to somebody earlier today who, has a multi-million-dollar portfolio, but struggles with very simple financial things, like, has a ton of credit card debt and various things. And you're paying 25% on your credit cards and you're making 10% return on your houses. So, like, wouldn't it make more sense to keep your credit card debt off? And it's just rewiring the way you think, and then understanding. And this, by the way, like, we as Americans, we are taught to use credit cards and to carry a balance and to do so. It doesn't. I remember when I graduated the Naval Academy, I barely scraped through, but I ended up learning how to study and learning how to do all that. And I graduated the Naval Academy, and for whatever reason, I decided that aerospace engineering sounded cool, and so I majored in aerospace engineering. Specifically,
he just picked it because it was the hardest major he could pick.
And I didn't know. I picked it because it sounded sexy.
It does. It does sound cool. I studied aerospace engineering.
I literally studied rocket science. Super hard, barely made it through, but I am a rocket scientist. And so, not a good one. Don't ever hire me to science your rocket, because I don't know how to. Unless Elon's listening. If Elon Musk is listening, I'd love to come work with SpaceX. But so anyway, I graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering. And my first car that I bought had a 17% interest rate on it. And I didn't know that was bad. I had no clue. I was proud to have a car. So that just tells you can have higher level education, But because no one is taught fundamental financial education, you have an aerospace engineer that's making terrible financial decisions. And if it doesn't change that, we'll end up becoming a broke aerospace engineer.
Right.
Right. And it just, starting with that fundamental baseline and then building off of it is how you build your dream life.
And I have two final questions. The first one has to do with White Feather. What is the legacy you want White Feather to leave behind? That's for each of you.
Well, for me, I would say what's exciting for us is watching our kids see a different example, because we grew up in very different childhoods, but I would say neither of our examples were good financially. I literally watched my mom and stepdad lose everything. And I remember as a kid, the feeling of those government trucks coming and taking our things away and getting rid of things that they put so much of their money into, being shipped off to an auction site and sent to Goodwill. And I was like, the amount of pride you put into that stuff is now all gone. So their pride went with it because they put that value in the things instead of our family, our life, which was, by the way, dissolving in front of our eyes. Because again, my brothers just left. So our family split and fractured in half that same day. So for me, we found it through real estate because it's exciting. It's something that we could do together, and we are our best selves together. We run a great team and we complement each other's skill sets really well because we're very different, but we both have like a core group of things that like can take action and make decisions and the things that matter, right? So you can actually move forward. But for me, it's letting our kids see, one, how husband and wife can work together and really do something cool. Two, the power of people and how making the right connections and having the right relationships is extremely important. And that's something that I try to teach every single day to our kids is be a good person. And lastly, money. I don't ever want my kids to have to struggle. And we've talked about this a lot. We will not give them, what do you call it? Like a
trust fund.
Trust fund.
No.
It will be very intentional. It will be, here's money to start your own business. Here's money to put towards coaching or mentorship.
Here's a private money loan that you can pay back.
Here's loans. So, and we will help you every step of the way. And if God forbid, we're not here to do that, we will put things in place. We're working on a trust right now with all of these rules in place so that somebody can help our kids just live a life that just matters and means more. So they don't have to do that 9 to 5 because they don't know what else to do. So White Feather, my aunt being my guardian angel, that was just planted in my heart from the beginning. There's so much more. And we've spent so long working out the details and working through the kinks of what that even means. But if we can show our kids that at 5, right? My our son's 4, my daughter's 6. They're already seeing mommy and daddy working, but they see mommy and daddy working, but let's take Friday off. Let's go to the zoo today because we can. Let's, mommy and daddy got to do a call on Saturday morning, but right after we're going to go do this. And then guess what? Monday, we don't have to do anything and you're off school. Why don't we go to Legoland?
Or why don't we go through Central America for 3 months
or why don't
while
we
our
take
house
the
pays
summer
for
off
it?
and travel?
So that we made sure they knew that renting out our house was paying for the vacation, so that they don't see a house as just a liability. They don't even know what those words mean yet, but they know. You know what I'm saying? Like
they will know.
They can see everything.
And
They
we
will
talk about it because it's like we also don't want privileged kids.
No,
like we did not have money growing up.
We annihilate. Entitlement. Entitlement to us is a disease in our house. Meaning we treat it like a disease. And so I'm way more ruthless than she is, but entitlement, the very best way to get booted out of my circle is to act entitled. Right. And so for kids, obviously, that they're a part of our family, it's just about training them that you earn what you get. You'll get love from us, but in a way, you also have to earn that love. Because if you're constantly toxic, it's going to be harder for people to love you. So you earn everything in this life, right? And so if you have to earn everything, then how can you be entitled to anything? You're not some rich kid. And we talk about this all the time. I love what Shaq said to his daughter. She was like, "Daddy, are we rich?" And he goes, "You're not." I am. Right? You didn't make this money.
Shaq's right. It's not yours.
Right. And so I can't wait until Alana asks me, "Daddy, are we rich?" Because I'm going to give her Shaq's answer. Right. And be like, but you have the opportunity to earn as much as you want in this life and build as much and make enough impact as you want. And that's what we want for you. So I agree with that. I agree with the family. When you move on outside of the family, I think the legacy for White Feather is, and we've talked about this many times before, but we are passionate Americans. Like, we believe that America is the greatest experiment that's ever existed in the world. And ultimately, the fabric of this country is about freedom. Right. The freedom for literally everything. It was what our founders fought for, and it's what we continue to fight for. It's why I went to Afghanistan. And ultimately, I remember thinking when I was in Afghanistan after we were married that I was more afraid than I was the first time. And I was like, I can't put my finger on it because my first deployment was way more violent and kinetic. I was doing roadside bomb defusion and things, or like route clearance and things like that. But it wasn't as dangerous. But I was more afraid. And I was like, man, and then I talked to her one time on the phone. And when I got off the phone, I was thinking to myself, I know what it is. It's because I have more to lose now. And ultimately, my role, number one, is to protect and to love her. And I can love her from here, but I can't protect her. And then it dawned on me that I'm not alone. If the house catches fire and she calls 911, fire trucks are going to be there and they're going to run into the blaze to rescue her. If she gets held up or a burglar comes into the house, police and their backup are going to rush into the house and they're going to risk their lives to protect a woman they don't know. Right? If she gets sick, there are people that are going to do everything they can to save her life, regardless of how long it takes them or how much they have to sacrifice. And so it dawned on me that the people that preserve and protect this American dream of freedom, the military, police, first responders, all those people that do that, by and large, they're the people who don't get to actually live it themselves because they have to work to pay their rent. You don't associate any of that group of class as wealthy or financially independent. And so what if we created a movement whose sole mission was to upend that tradition and help all of them not get handouts, but learn to create financial freedom using the stuff that's available, using the stuff that we used to go from food stamps to financial freedom. What if we taught that to 16.5 million veterans in this country? What if we taught that to millions and millions of police officers and firefighters and first responders, and you created a movement of millions of financially free people that will continue to serve because that's in their nature. They didn't sign up to serve and volunteer to serve because of the money, obviously. They volunteered to serve because of the type of people they are. So what if now they're financially free and they can serve in greater capacity? That's the legacy of White Feather and of VFF. And that's why it's no longer, I'm going to keep pushing forward. And as long as my heart is beating, you can't stop me. I'm telling you, like, we're very, very close to this movement catching so much fire that even if we die, it won't stop.
Yeah, you're building something that's going to last. And then, what advice would you give to a couple that wants to achieve happiness? How have you achieved happiness?
Communication.
Yeah. Wow. So there's the stuff that's obvious, right? You need to be attracted to each other. And it needs to be more obvious. You need to be physically attracted to each other. Yeah. You need to be emotionally attracted to each other, right? And you need to be ultimately committed to building a life together, as opposed to, there's little things like, for instance, and again, I don't know if we're doing it right. I just know we're 15 years in and you're doing pretty good, right? So
you're the two happiest people I freaking know. So that's why I said, what's this you got for us?
Well, I mean, and we've had epic, gargantuan blowouts, right?
We are very passionate people. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
We love passionately and we fight passionately because we care a lot.
Yeah.
And when you care a lot, you take it seriously and nothing is off the table. Any dispute or argument we're going to talk about, we're going to face it. And we've made a rule because it took us years to figure this out. You do not walk away. You might take your time, but you don't walk away. You don't go to bed angry. You have to talk it out. And we learn what each other needs, right? So that's important. If somebody needs 5 minutes, give them 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's not with the dismissal of, I'm not doing this right now. It's with the understanding that I'm going to give them the space and then we're going to talk about it. But you have to realize that you're on each other's team, right? You want to be together. You fundamentally connected initially. You have to find that again. And so we fight passionately because we care. And communication has by far been our number one strength. And it started off with him and now it's me. And we've like flip-flopped throughout the years, but now I'm the one that initiates it more often than not. And he more wants to just disappear.
Yeah, it's wild.
Because
she used to just fight or flight. She would just walk away. And I'm like,
because
goodness
I was
gracious.
never confrontational, but you have forced confrontation on me for so long that like now I'm like, all right, let's do this. Like,
yeah. But when we came back together, invariably, after we communicated through and we aligned our expectations again, we were like, wow, this is so much better than it was before the fight. So like what we see now when we fight is every single fight is truly, and we don't see it in the moment, but like it's exhausting. You don't want to be here. We literally will sit there and be like, I am exhausted. I don't want to be doing this, but it's not finished. And so we don't stop until a resolution is created where both of us are happy, and then we apologize for the parts of it that were negative. And there is both of us always. When someone apologizes and extends an olive branch, it doesn't matter, and this is just me, it doesn't matter, and us really, it doesn't matter if they were in the wrong, because sometimes you do have clear cut someone was in the wrong. Most of the time it's not, it's more muddled. But even if someone was clearly in the wrong, you apologize as a way of both of you dropping to your knees symbolically and saying, I am not standing proud. I am humbling myself before you, just like you are to me, because we're in this together and neither of us is above the other.
Well, and it's accepting responsibility instead of implementing.
Because most of the time you did do something wrong as well.
Because there's something that you did, right? And so we say, I'm sorry for.
Right.
What are you sorry? I'm sorry too. And then we move on. No. I'm sorry for doing this.
Right.
And then in return, well, I'm sorry for doing this. That's what caused the fight.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't fight a lot. Like, I feel like we hardly fight anymore. When we do, we get at it.
Yeah. No, we have little dust ups. Like we had a dust up this morning. Just it was a misaligned expectations. That's all it ever is one person has one expectation that's unvoiced. The other person expects something different that's unvoiced. And then you collapse. And
oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but this morning it was about a trip that I wasn't sure if I wanted to take. And I asked her about it. But in the past, I have asked her about trips that I want to take, and I'll ask her about it. And then if she has something other than just pure support of me getting to go, then I get disappointed. In this instance, I wasn't doing that, but she couldn't have known that. And so she was like, well, we have these other two things. And I was like, okay, no problem. I just won't do it. But then she felt bad because it felt like, well, now I've been put in a position where it feels like I'm not supporting you. And I want to support you, but there's these other two things that we're doing. And so it was, and then that sounds silly, right? It's a miscommunication, misalignment, but it took some working through. And once we worked through it, I was like, okay, that makes total sense, right? It makes total sense that but it was, probably 10 minutes of just bickering back and forth. And I say that to say, I never ever liked those couples that seem like they're super happy and they tell you about how happy they are and then they move on. Wrong, yeah. And it's like, bro, like, come on, that's not real life.
Yeah.
Like, I may aspire to that, but I can't relate to that.
I'm not one bit surprised in how transparent both of you are, because it's reality. Like you're real. You're not like, I wasn't expecting a canned answer. Like, oh, we're the greatest couple. Like Disneyland is hiring Buddy and Kimberly to move into the castle.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking that. So I do have a surprise for both of you. You talked about parenting. And I'm sorry to do this to you, Kimberly, but I'll invite you in the future to another podcast episode so you can talk about parenting.
Oh no! Remember we said one and
I know.
and done. Oli,
but that's why we went long form.
Good Lord,
that's why we went long form.
This is like Joe Rogan type 2 hours.
2 hours and 16 minutes.
2 hours.
Yes.
Wow.
That's because you bickering on, talking.
We gotta go eat lunch.
I genuinely, I hope you had a wonderful time. I think people are going to see that and absolutely lose their minds on, like, now that I see what you're building with White Feather and VFF, I'm like, holy shit, this is you guys.
Yeah.
Like, it's you.
Yeah.
Like, this is all your blood and
lots of other people like us.
And tears.
And lots of people that are like that.
Of course, because you can't build a village without.
Right.
And the people that we've found along the way have been
phenomenal.
We call them family for a reason.
Phenomenal people.
To your point, like, you walk in a room and you just vibe with people and you sense their hearts are all in the right place. And I think that's what it is like, we're all in it to just be in each other's lives and help and encourage and support. And we can't wait when we see people that have gone through a course and then all of a sudden, skyrocket.
$100 million empire.
Yeah.
You're just like
the
yes.
coolest thing you've ever seen.
Yes. Like,
It's so cool. And that's just, it's exciting. So, but thank you for saying that and for like seeing that and feeling that, because that is what it is. It's our family.
Well, I just thought, after Buddies, it was just like getting the both of you together. Like, I just can't wait until you see it. And it was so cool. I mean, I felt gritty because I'm like, holy shit. Like, that was really, really, that was mind blowing to hear that story just with you together.
Yeah.
And Buddy, it made me think about what you said. Like, this is a video biography that the kids get to see. Like, this is what mom and dad are all about. Because it was, you don't get we don't get to go back see our parents.
Yeah.
He is
How
writing a
special
book,
would that be?
which one of these days will finally be finished.
Yeah, I got to finish that book.
It started off as a war story, and then he's
Started
like,
off
it's more like a
17
Nicholas
years
Sparks
ago.
story.
Yeah, I started writing it 17 years ago, so I should really get it finished.
Are you going to, is it the whole biography of what you've accomplished so far?
Well, I mean, obviously I started 17 years ago, so there's a whole different segment now.
I was going to say,
Like, so,
it's not going to be a little book.
No, it won't be a quick read.
No,
It'll
this
be
is a
a
novel.
It'll be a novel. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a really, really good one. So whenever that's launched.
There's no, I mean, you'll have to do a book launch then. My whole thing is like, I was thinking about this for both of you. White Feather is like, when people talk about you, just not in when they're talking about you, they talk about it together. It's like Kimberly and Buddy. It's not, hey, like Buddy's awesome. It's Kimberly and Buddy. I just want to give you guys some perspective. Maybe this is a good thing for like couples to understand this is a journey you go on.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a fairly new development, to be fair, because when I got pregnant with my daughter, I hadn't been able to get pregnant. I had just kept having miscarriages. So when I finally got pregnant, he was like, okay, let's hit pause, just relax, de-stress, relax, like don't do anything, don't worry about it. And he had just started coaching really for the first time at that same time. So it was a perfect time for me to take a step back and stop stressing. And then my daughter was born. My mom had died, if you remember, right before she was born. So there was a lot happening. And then my daughter was colicky and she was struggling. And there was just a lot of hardship in those first like 6 months. And then basically, as soon as I felt like my life was back together, I got pregnant again. And I was just like, okay. So the first few years of motherhood for me was motherhood.
Right.
Like there was not much White Feather involvement. I'm just going to be honest. I mean, I was there and he would include me in everything and tell me stories and get my advice all the time, which helped me feel included, made me feel really special. And what was more important is he would take my ideas because he made me feel validated in that way because I have awesome ideas, obviously.
It's a mixed bag.
But, I still felt involved. So I could do what I could do in those moments. So to be fair, it's not always together all the time. It doesn't work that way. Real life doesn't work that way.
Right.
It's going to evolve. And it evolved to where it was mostly his shoulders. Because when he was deployed, it was mostly on my shoulders. And then that was a season where it was on him. And I would say during the summer when we were traveling and we had the ability for the first time to be as low stress as could possibly be. Our kids were a little bit older. And I got to see him doing calls on Zoom. Everything. It's not going in an office anymore. He's doing it in the next bedroom over and I can hear the whole thing. And I was like, do you even know what you're talking about? He was having this call about marketing or something and he had absolutely no idea what he was doing. And I was like, do you want me to help you? Like, I happen to know a little bit more about you than marketing. He's like, sure. Because my degree was in marketing. So I come in and I was like, just started to sit in on things and not to go too long down this road, but I started to find my place again.
Nice.
I started to realize he's just bulldozing his way through because that's what he does. He figures it out. And he works really freaking hard because it matters. He's passionate about it. It matters. And I was like, I'm finally in a place where I can help you. The kids are a little bit older. They're not going to die. What if I turn my eyes around? And so I started inserting myself, right? That's part of it, right? Is you can't ask always to find a place, which I tried for years. I was like, find a place for me. He's like, okay. And he would give me sales, which I'm horrible at. I don't like sales. Or he would give me solar. And I was like, I don't want to do solar. So it was me finding my place, right? And finding my identity again. So that's a big part of it as a partnership. When you're working with your spouse, it's really hard, but you just have to find your own way and you have to figure out what works. But that was me inserting myself back in the very strategic things I could do.
I think that's a cool thing. Just think about like as a couple, like couples are falling apart. Like divorce rate is just terrible. Communication is terrible. Just, I think that might be a cool, like, I'm just excited once you see this to say, How was that? Like, it was awesome to hear those stories come together. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah, no.
So I hope you had a great experience.
I did.
This is good. This is good. Thank you.
Was it good?
I'm not freezing and shaking
Okay, good.
anymore, so that's probably a good
There you
sign.
go.